You're good.
Okay, good evening, everybody. This is the regular HARC meeting of Wednesday, February 19th, 5:32 p.m. at Rebecca Hall. It is a hybrid meeting. Decide to call in. You can dial 301-715-8592. Pass ID is 898-5033-9990. And passcode this evening is 618929. Purpose of HARC is to preserve, maintain, and enhance the historic character, scale, and architectural integrity and cultural resources of the town. I'll tell you right in the historic landmark district, which we're going to talk about tomorrow morning a lot. With respect to the roll call from town council, I don't see Elena. From staff, we have Erica, Darren, Piper, Kristen, and Allie. See Allie. Okay. And we'll do our roll call.
Sure. Kieran Lannon,
Stacy Lake,
Matt Lee,
Mark Shamba.
Bob Mather, Andrew Williamson.
Elita Mladenova over Zoom.
Hi, Lisa. Welcome. Glad you could make it.
Oh, yes.
And we'll see you tomorrow at 8 a.m.
Yep.
Why does everybody wink at me? I couldn't really see all these reactions and biomechanics. I was gone for 6 months. I'm getting a feeling. How about staff announcements?
I think the only thing I would share is looking forward to the retreat with all of you tomorrow. And Mark has been doing an incredible job of preparing for it. We've sort of collaborated on the agenda, and we're looking forward to a very interactive, engaging session with all of you. So thank you for getting up early and joining in.
And just to whet your appetite, there are at least 11 topics that'll be the bulk of the meeting on process that we'll go through. Some of them from 21, 22 that we didn't quite fully implement. And I would just ask you to come and open mind and take a straw poll, and we'll come out more efficient, I guarantee you. Which means no more 11 o'clock meetings, Bob.
Okay.
I know one other announcement, and thanks, Kieran, for your help. Excuse me, Kristen, sorry. Tomorrow, if you guys know in your in the closet where you've got these vests tomorrow, I'd like to take a group photo of the best artboard we've ever had. If you could bring it.
Oh.
you're the only one that's got one.
I have
What
one.
do you mean? We all got them. I handed you yours.
Mine's a little small.
Well, if you have it, bring it. I might have one extra, but I mean, I gave you one because then you said, oh, somebody else really needs it in the future. And anyway, okay. All right, I'll cover for you. Public comment on non-agenda items. I don't see any online, Piper, unless you do. So everybody's anxious to get to the meeting. We'll go through the HARC process slide, I guess. Erica, you want to call it up?
Do you want to approve the minutes? Is that on the agenda?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. You're just so excited. You're back in person.
Yeah, thank you. Senior moment. Do we have a motion for the approval of the HARC meeting minutes of January 15th?
I move to approve the HARC meeting minutes dated January 15th, 2025 as written.
I will second.
Kieran?
Kieran, yes.
Stacy, yes.
Matt, yes.
Mark, yes.
Bob, yes.
Okay, and I was off the hook. There was no chair meeting. Public comment on agenda. We heard that. Public items. Let's go. Rows and residents. It's a.
Do you, can you see my screen for
Oh,
the
there they
public?
are.
Yeah, if you want to go through
Yes.
that really quickly.
All right, well, we've got almost an overflow crowd here, so I don't know if they'll pay attention, but the HARC chair introduces the project, and there's nobody, just so you know, Erica. The staff gives a presentation and then answers HARC's question. The applicant gives the presentation and answers HARC's question, or answers HARC's questions. Then the public is invited to make comments. We ask for 3 minutes or less on the comment and germane to HARC's purview, not other subjects that are the purview of council or somebody else. The applicant then can address any comments made by those public comments, and the public comment ends and HARC deliberates. There is no conversation allowed back and forth during public comments between HARC and the public. Okay, now, the first project for this evening is the Rosen residence. Do we have any recusals? No, good. It's a continuation from September 18th, November 20th, and December 18th. Yes, that's 3 hearings. It's consideration of an application for small-scale new construction of a principal structure, hillside developing 2 zone district on a lot with a pre-construction grade or slope of the building site coverage of 25% or greater, regardless of the floor area per land use code 7203B13. Legal description, lot 18, the overlook. PUD East subdivision, 744 Primrose is the address. Hillside Developing 2 is the zone district owner. Kenneth Rosen, excuse me, and applicant Rowan Shaw of Methodist Homes and staff member Darren Candelaria. Darren.
Thank you, Mark. This is the consideration of an application for small-scale new construction of a principal structure at 744 Primrose. The project scope is new construction of a single-family residence. The lot is located on the south side of Primrose Lane in Hillside Developing 2 Zone District and Developing Hillside Treatment Area. This proposal will look familiar as it was continued from September, November, and December 2024 HARC meetings. Previous conditions 1 through 3 all relate to stepping down the structure to better blend with the natural topography and reduce apparent mass, scale, and visibility. To address these conditions, the applicant lowered the height of the north and south parapet walls by 2 feet, in addition to lowering the second floor and basement by 2 feet. This creates a 4-foot step between the garage and the first floor on the west elevation. A drain-through planted deck was added to the southern and western facades to simulate stepping. The walkout basement patio was removed, allowing the natural grade to remain. The basement was also lowered by 2 feet, reducing the visual impact of the southern facade. Additionally, material changes on the first floor break up the massing and separate the garage, second floor, and basement. HARC should discuss if these changes are enough to meet the conditions. Previous conditions 6 and 7 were to reduce the amount of glazing on the southern facade and to reduce the size and grouping of the windows to be more traditional. Glazing on the southern facade has been reduced from the original proposal of 406 to 241 square feet. However, the windows are untraditional in size and grouping with large expanses of glass. Therefore, condition 7 is retained. Previous condition 4 was to revise the landscaping planners to be more natural and minimize visual impact. The planners have been removed and natural landscaping is proposed. Condition 5 was to show the location of utilities. A utilities PVC connection is shown. However, the location of gas meters, electric meters, AC units, etc. are not indicated. Therefore, this condition is retained. Condition 8 was to step down the building height. The overall height of the building has been lowered by 1 foot. Concerns surrounding mass and scale were addressed primarily through lowering the building into the hillside. HARC should discuss whether this, in addition to other changes, are significant enough to meet the conditions. Outside of the conditions for mass and scale, the applicant is substantially compliant with the design guidelines. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the application. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
For Darren?
Darren, I'm just curious if the applicant had any back and forth with you on the windows.
I did not.
That's all I have.
Very good. We'll hear from the applicant. If you share your screen, please, and go ahead and do the introduction. Welcome.
Thank you. This is Rohan Shaw here with Method Homes, here to present the Rosen residence. Pull the screen. Okay, so to run through some of the updates, thanks again, staff, for the summary. We have taken the elevation of the building, which was already 4 feet below the adjacent street level, and lowered it an additional 2 feet. So there's almost a full flight of steps down to get to the front door, and that's the maximum number of steps that we could fit. That still allowed for the garage to be at grade with the roadway. You can see that shown as well in the floor plan, where we've essentially maximized the number of steps that we can use to get down from the garage level to the existing footprint of the house. In addition, to help, one of the big struggles with this lot, as a reminder, is this is a much smaller, it's one of the smallest lots in the PUD. The scale of this building relative to other lots is very small, so the amount of the constraints of the setbacks on the lot, as well as the sloping of the hillside, limited the amount of revisions we could make to the building. Despite that, we did look to create an additional 1 foot offset as the building stepped down the hill to reduce the scale of the building relative to the hillside. It doesn't seem as apparent in plan, but it's pretty visible when you're looking up at the building from the southern facade. In addition, we did reduce the windows by 60%. I mean, from 421 square feet to 241 square feet of glazed area. We essentially got rid of all of the windows that were floor to ceiling. We've made all of the windows, 2'6" to 3 foot off the ground from within the building. We can break up the window forms with muntins if needed, but we have reduced the amount of glazing significantly. And relative to the other buildings in the neighborhood, there's very limited glazing facing down the slope. In addition, there was discussions in the last HARC meeting about the grade seeming unnatural where the daylight basement was. So we removed the daylight connection of the basement below, which allowed the grade essentially to infill up to a higher elevation. So rather than the grade being cut at the ground floor of the basement, the grade is now 3 feet up, which is the natural grade, essentially, to make the building seem more natural and to lower its aesthetic relative to the downhill portion of the building, which should help quite a bit in terms of it not feeling like it's tall, because you have about 3 feet less and more than that in this corner of grade drop. We also, in addition to lowering the parapets and the building itself by 2 feet and 4 feet respectively, we also lowered the parapets at the upper deck as well. We also removed the 2-story continuity of material here that was discussed for the fireplace from the design to help break up the building form more, to really express the fact that it's stepping down the hill, because any 2-story structures of material seemingly were not viewed favorably by the board. Let's see. And that is the full summary of revisions.
Thank you. Would the board like to ask any questions?
I have a lot of questions, but I want to see if my wants to go first.
You're it.
Let's see. I'm curious what the material is between the windows, and I'm also curious what the deck fascia material is. We look on A400. It's not apparent to me what that sort of gray material is. And then the deck fascia seems to be a continuous 18 inches, 2 feet of a metal panel, but it's calling out to that to match a corrugated metal. And I don't see a corrugated metal on here.
The corrugated metal was removed in the last HARC review, so that's a note that should just be revised. It's just a color to match the board and batten cedar. So it is a earth-toned, non-reflective, dark-stained material, or a dark integrated color metal to match the board and batten stained siding. that's
That's
there on the
the
building.
material between the windows. Correct.
Correct. And the fascia material. So the fascia material, the material between the windows, and the fascia of the upper roof form should all be the same earth tone, dark contrasted metal material.
Okay, thanks. Could you tell me so if we look on the front elevation, looks like there's a column and beam that are rendered as vertical stained wood siding. Is that your intent?
At the front elevation, you're talking about this column and beam up here?
Correct.
Yeah, so we haven't identified exactly the color of that material. It either would match the wood of the siding, or it could be the same darker contrasting material that is at the fascia. We're open to both of those materials being there.
Okay. I'm also curious, that doesn't look like from the renderings there's any trim proposed anywhere on the project. Is that your intent?
The window system that we're proposing using is a triple glazed net zero window. So there's limitations in what finish options are available. It is a flat finished, a flat dark gray material, though there are the ability to add muntins to that material if the window form needs to be broken down.
I'm kind of asking about window trim, door trim, corner boards. They're just not a level of detail in the model. I'm not sure if you're proposing trimless conditions everywhere or if you just haven't detailed the model out.
Yeah, we're proposing trimless conditions at all those intersections. The intersections of the corners, there's a metal recess detail that creates a shadow line at each of the corners. And then each of the windows and doors has a conventional metal trim condition, flashing condition.
Thank you. What's the material of the flat roof and the parapets? One little glimpse in the rendering, it looks like it's white, so I'm concerned it's going to be a white roofing membrane that's not matching sort of the hillside with no ballast. Can you describe what that?
No, it's ballasted. No, it's a ballasted roof. Yeah, it's indicated in the roof plan. They're ballasted roof decks, so they're going to be covered in aggregate, earth toned aggregate.
So you're saying that's on the roof plan, even though it's not in the material page?
Yes, yeah, it's been indicated like that from the original submittal. Sorry, we haven't received any questions about that beyond because it was listed as ballasted. Yeah. Yeah, the idea is for it to be natural, and also that increases the longevity of the roof. It keeps it a low SRI color so that it doesn't stand out or reflect light back.
Gotcha. And then I think this is my last question. Looks like the siding, the board and batten, it's not highly visible from the renderings. Looks like it's going all the way and touching grade. Do you intend it to be buried into the grade?
No, there should be at least 8-inch reveal that happens anytime that board and batten material comes adjacent to the ground. So there should be essentially a line that's shown at 8 inches above the ground that follows that diagonal.
Thank you. That's all of my questions.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Just one quick question. If you look at the south elevation, that west bedroom, and then the east with the balcony on top side as you look from a south elevation, which one of those did you say was pushed back a foot, the west bedroom? The step back?
The west bedroom, yes. Mm-hmm. And it was stepped in and stepped down.
Okay, and before we lose you and we can't ask questions, could it go back another foot or two into I guess it's the garage area or whatever's back there?
Can that step go back? Like, can we make the step start earlier?
Wait,
Is that what you're asking?
Back 1 foot, could you go back another foot or two, or what's the situation?
No, so that we've already minimized the minimum allowable size for a bedroom here in terms of width, and this garage barely fits a single car as it is. So I don't think there's not really any additional room to adjust the width of this any further.
I do see that
We're already at 10 feet.
you look to be about 6 inches from your setback on the west with the garage. Is there a reason why you're holding back that far?
As opposed to going right to the setback, mostly because the lot area is driving all of the volume calcs for this project. It's in the overlook PUD in this lot because it's so difficult to build on with the fire truck turnaround being located on it. We're really limited in any sort of expansion of footprint that's there. So it's mostly volume driven that we didn't expand that out an additional 6 inches or so, or 4 inches, I believe.
Anything else, Matt?
I just kind of want to just clarify that. It looks like you're about got over 1,000 cubic feet. Well, I guess you are kind of close.
I think I can double check, but it was a combination of the volume and the impervious area that we were right up against the limits for. So we've been a little careful about any accidental slight increases in the building envelope, because that was something that we vetted with the town.
Okay, thank you very much. Any public comment? If so, electronically, please raise your hand. This project. I don't see anybody. Okay, then we'll go to deliberations. Darren has proposed that also cited the old number 1, 2, and 3 for us to at least ask the question. Did they step down enough and go back? The flow with the natural topography enough, and she cited that, there was a 4-foot, and the applicant noted a 4-foot step down now. So we should pencil those in to at least discuss. And so who would like to go first?
I'll go first. Being that this is their 4th meeting.
Third.
Work session.
Oh, well, the work session's a meeting.
But let me,
Okay,
I
okay.
should state, Kristen already did her homework, and you can go ahead and tell them.
Yeah, sure.
Commissioner.
So I did reach out to our town manager to request an exemption to the limitation on continuances, because we've had 3 thus far, and she did approve that. So should you decide that you need an additional continuance, you may
Well,
do so.
but that's not my,
That's-
sorry, that's not my reason for.
But that's something
my
we all
statement.
needed to.
That's something you needed to know. Yeah.
I do feel like we did have to make the same request a couple times early on regarding stepping and mass and scale, but they've addressed those concerns, at least for me. I think this project's been particularly hamstrung by the shallowness of the lot. What we want to see in other instances in developing hillside is a long 150-foot long chase up the hill. They don't have that here. So the amount of stepping that they can do and still have a functional space is somewhat limited. It's a tough lot, which we acknowledged, I think, at the beginning. For me, on mass and scale, they've addressed my concerns. I do still feel like the large expanses of glass, and you know what, I can't decide whether they're large or whether they're just in proportion because the building is so small. I think if we did, and we don't do this, but if we did much of a ratio comparison with some even very adjacent projects, I think it'd probably be in the ballpark. I don't necessarily need to grind on them about windows anymore either. I'm pretty good with
Okay.
approval.
On that note, can I just, to me, it talks about the grouping of windows to be more traditional, and traditional tends to be more vertical. And I think these windows are square or rectangular this way, and I think maybe just adding to note number 1, just let them know traditional windows have a vertical emphasis. That's what we're looking for.
Like, for instance, not designing for them. But if one of those rectangular windows was divided into a
Yeah.
main and a side, a large fixed and a casement on the side, that would introduce that
break 'em
vertical
up.
mullion.
That's what I drew into,
Okay.
same
Okay.
thing.
I'm fine with that. I would be fine with that.
And the one, there is on the one side, I think it's on the, let me look here, make sure I get the right one. On the. All right, just,
Here, I have these right here. The one that you're looking for.
well, I'm looking for the elevation.
Bob, I think it's on the west side of the garage.
I believe so. He's
Mhm.
got vertical windows on that side. In the lower section of the building, in the basement area, as well as the step down, bedroom area. And then there's some horizontal. And I think if we could just, look more toward what he did.
A400.
uh,
Yeah.
Yes, a 400 elevation number
Sorry.
2.
3, 4, yes. There we go. Yes. If we had more, I think looking more toward windows that are on that, west elevation, I think we'd be great.
So Stacy's already commented all the way through all of them. Well, Bob, you're speaking, do you want to add on?
I think they've done a lot of work on this thing and get the stepping. It is a small site. I think they probably done as much as they can.
Um. Internet or Matt?
Sure, I'm pretty much what Bob and Stacy are saying. Co-sign on that.
Matt?
I have a bunch of comments. I think the biggest one for me is I don't feel that the addition of the vegetated roof that wraps around from the deck is doing the job of breaking up the mass and scale there. I would like to see that roof that was omitted, go away. And I am uncertain the right direction to continue to break up the mass of that southwest corner. I think if the grade was brought up 2 feet to 30 inches on that corner, it would appear as a 1.5 story element, a box essentially.
Settled more into the hill.
Settled more in the hillside. I'm not sure if their grading is going to allow them to bring that side up without it feeling unnatural. I don't know if adding retaining walls is going kind of back to something they had proposed earlier is a good solution or not. I understand their struggle with the bedroom size, but if the wall plane was stepped more between the foundation and the siding, and I don't know if that needs to be 3 inches or 6 inches or a foot, that would certainly be a way to accomplish it. So I'm curious if anyone else agrees with me on the roof and the stepping or not.
I don't mind it as an element. I think it's somewhat, I'd be concerned that south facing the way it is in an arid climate, I don't know what's actually going to grow in that. Given the inherent shallowness of it as well. I like the idea. But I do want to know what happens if no plants grow there. Then what does it become? Is it a ballasted roof below the windows? Or what is it?
What it'll be.
But in terms of breaking up the levels and breaking up the vertical, the plane, I think it does do that.
It seems like a reach, like an afterthought, doesn't seem integrated with the design to me. And it expands the presence of that deck on the eastern side, which is large for the building, but not a large deck because it's a smaller project. So I don't have an issue with the size of that deck. But that continual band across seems like an extension of this deck. It just seems like the wrong approach. That they started doing a pretty good job of breaking up the massing, and I think that's the one element that's still not correct or right. That's how I've seen
Are
it.
you good with the massing on the east side?
I am.
Okay. I mean, I'll chime in on that. I think, and actually, since the applicant didn't get a chance to comment on the grading, and I am all for putting another 30 inches on there if it would allow. If the board would allow me, I'd like to ask him the question. So, rather than leave him in the dark. So I'll pause the deliberations, just ask very succinctly, since you didn't get to comment on this. What's the viability of putting 30 inches to get this nestled more into the hill on that west elevation? Soil.
Yeah, it's viable to get it in the corner. It'll obviously be sloped to the angle of refuse after maybe a foot or two. I am also a little worried about it looking unnatural, having just a flat pad, that close to the corner of the building. But it does slope down from east to west, so it would be mimicking the grade to the east a little bit more. I don't know if you guys can even tell really from this image, but it actually slopes up, to beyond 3 feet, above the basement level on this side of the building. So it would be kind of like equalizing the grade a little bit from the east side to the west side, to bring a little bit of grade over here.
I would just be concerned that it would look the goal here is to have the grade seem natural, existing. And if we're gonna pile a couple of feet up against the side of the house, it's gonna look like dirt piled up against the side of the house. He doesn't have enough lot to taper it out very well. It's just gonna be I
think that's about, I think it,
We're back to deliberations. Thank you to the applicant. Let's beat this to death and in or out. I mean, I think it's a great idea, but if you can't feather it, maybe that's a problem.
well, I guess I would like, before we get into the details of this, sounds like Stacy doesn't have a problem with the massing there and thinks the roof is doing the job. I do not. Does anyone, what's the straw poll of that?
well, I don't know who could do this quickly, but I've gone back to one of the images from the previous round with no roof, and everyone could see that here with no breakup. I mean, I think, like I said, I don't think the plants are actually going to grow there, and it's going to become something else. It's going to be a ballasted roof, or maybe it ends up with some standing seam on top of it, or it ends up with something else. But it's breaking up the wall plane more than it is here.
Well, before we take a straw poll, let Elitza and Andrew just comment so we've finished the first round of comments here. Elitza, what do you think? Where are you?
Or, to a large extent, I do agree with what Bob was saying. I think they did a great job with improving the design and stepping it down with a slope. With one comment, I think that it would be further improved if they actually reduce the overhang of the roof on the south side. I understand the functionality of it, but to me, the stepping down and the reducing of the mass would be further improved if they shortened that eave.
Which one are you talking about?
Right here.
The highest.
That one?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
mhm,
Okay.
Yep. To me, that sticks out way too far out. And if they reduce it, that would help with meeting, excuse me.
How far does that stand proud of it? I didn't note that. Is that overhang, that eve? Can't be more than 2 feet.
What is it? Is it like 4 or 5 feet?
I'd say 3.
Let's get the measurement. Well, can the applicant just shout out the number? Save us some time.
It's 3'9".
Thank you.
I actually appreciate that overhang there.
Similar.
Yeah, I think I don't want this to all feel like a paraben box, modern box. appreciate the roof on there.
Okay. Anything else,
Yeah.
Elisa? And then Andrew can comment and we'll go back and.
And I do like the plant art. I think that, you know, with the proper irrigation, things could potentially grow there. And it also breaks the facade. So I think that's it's a good form. It's a good approach.
Andrew?
Yeah, I just don't, from some of the other projects that we've seen, I just feel like that lower level would normally protrude out a little bit further. And then the setback would come from the second floor. And this is a substitute just to try to fix that. And it is, you know, I never realized it until Matt brought it up, but how far that banner does, it kind of, I know it's not part of the deck, but it definitely makes it look a lot more expansive going across the whole southern facade of it, even though it's indented and then cuts back. I do agree with Stacy. I think that, like, yeah, you could get something to grow there for a little while, but I don't think it's going to last for a long time. So what does it become?
Perennial.
If that's an 18-inch deep roof, you're gonna have to do some structural gymnastics to have enough soil to grow anything.
Well, I think what's on the table is, do we think that broke up the mass scale enough without, as Andrew said, you know, enlarging the house on the lower level, right? To make it look like it stepped back further. Is that what you bring it more out proud down below?
Yeah, and I mean, and I think the problem is that we don't prescribe things, but we've kind of asked for this to be taken care of at every meeting, and then this is what has come as the solution.
Yeah.
And so I guess now we're like, well,
We're gonna
This
talk about
is-
that, but we need to say what we need, and we tried, and this is what we got.
Yeah.
So are you okay or not okay? That's a scale.
would like to see the applicant be able to do something more for that. So I'm in agreement with what Matt said. And I'm with Bob too on making the windows more traditional.
You know, well, let's finish mass and scale and we'll talk about windows, because there's gonna be something, I think, in windows added to this. Added to number one, that Darren already has, but. Anybody agree, straw poll, that we wanna enlarge, talk this way?
Yep.
I'm gonna talk dirty to you, enlarge the house on the lower floor so it looks like a bigger setback?
Well, look at what we're talking about. It's this piece here,
Yeah.
right? And that's, I don't know what that room is. I guess it's a
The bedroom.
bedroom. That'll be a bedroom someday.
Yeah.
Unofficially,
So do you mean below the lower level?
lower level.
Yeah.
Wouldn't see a problem if that came out another foot or 18 inches, that depth of that.
If they have the area to work
If
with.
they have the area.
Yeah.
Well,
It's not a big house. I have no problem with it
This is a
growing.
small house.
Yeah.
And he's stuck
Smallest house we've seen.
with the volume and all that stuff he's gotta do.
So what you're proposing is that it comes out some number of feet and has a shed roof above it.
I don't know about putting a shed roof on this house. I don't think that.
Well, it has to have something, or it just keeps the flat roof. You're talking about expanding it under the flat roof that's there?
Hmm.
Is that,
That's almost as bad as that.
I'm suggesting that we acknowledge that board form material as the foundation, and then the upper wall steps in 4 inches, 6 inches, the change of plane. And it acknowledges the difference between the foundation and the siding, and it's 2 boxes stacked on top of each other. The top one is inset,
4 inches
4 to 6 inches.
on the bedroom, second floor bed.
Yes. To me, that would.
10 foot wide now
10-6.
and 6.
Well, that's to the outside
All right,
wall
well,
too.
let's just take a straw poll, because I think we need to get some clarity. So who would support a step back, or excuse me, pulling out the lower level? Well, or pushing the second level back to get 6 more inches?
I would.
Both?
Either one or a
We
combination.
could do it in and or.
Well, if you push the top one back a little bit, pull the other one out, you keep the same volume and all square footage, but he's
All right.
limited. by-
Anybody else? That's 1, 2, 3. Elitsa?
Yep.
Well, that's fine.
I
I'm
don't-
not because there's already material change and a roof breaking up the plane. That's been enough on other projects for this.
Okay, well, we got 4. I don't have to vote.
Okay.
In case you want to know how I would tell you tomorrow. Okay. So I think we would add a condition 3. This is, relatively minor. It's not painful. That either
That's a combination.
on the south elevation to push back the bedroom floor 6 inches
Pull
or
Or-
pull out the lower level floor 6 inches at their, and that's under the mass and scale.
It's 24A1.
Yep. So we're okay with that wording, so we don't have to mess with it later. Okay, south elevation. Okay. Pull out or push back. 4. Okay,
And if I think Stacy has sort of talked me out of the idea of raising the grade there, because it's gonna be
Yeah.
too much of a. hole in the
Yeah,
hillside.
you talk
look
about
like a
it.
strip.
An afterthought.
Okay, and you've convinced me too, Stacy. All right. We're not allowed to adjudicate window trim. The way I look at 23,
Mhm.
wish there was,
But
but
I think we could make a note on
the verticality in the
Yeah.
grouping.
traditional windows have a
Separation.
vertical emphasis.
So would it be okay?
Darren already has that in, it's been in a condition for.
Well,
I was just adding those words to
Oh,
it.
okay. got it.
yeah, and Bob, I think that's good that we add to create verticality and some separation on these windows, similar to the west elevation. Similar to the west elevation. Okay.
I have one more.
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
It's a minor thing, but
I have support.
I went through the plant list and there's some on there that aren't consistent with our thing. So I want to say I guess this would be number 4. Verify that plant list is consistent with DH 15, I think it's 15, intro A 1.1 through 1.4.
Talking about landscaping, the plan is very formal. It's just strips following the building. I think it should be a more natural
Yes.
landscape plan per SL 43.
And it's not 15, it's 11.
It's 11.
11
Okay.
plant materials.
I did right.
That's right.
DH 11.
But would yours be separate or included in this plant subject?
It could be combined into one,
Okay.
probably best to make it separate there. I would say revise landscaping. At the formal alignment of plantings for SL 4.3.
Okay. Okay, any other topics?
I think I do. I had a lot of questions about the materiality. I think we just asked the applicant to update their material sheet, so they are calling out all materials on the project. It's not confusing of what's what.
Okay,
I don't have a condition written. for
what's
that.
missing? Update material.
Well, there's a reference to corrugated metal. There's not clarity, there's not notes or clarity to any of the materiality other than visually. But even so, they've got different
Okay,
colors and, I would want to make sure that the ballasted roof, the flat roof is not a reflective white membrane, that we've got dark flashings that come down into a ballast, some type of gray ballasted or stone. Roof
there was material on top of it. On
It
that
just says
note.
ballasted roof on the.
Well, what about that note he's referring to, which I didn't see either?
It's
It
just
didn't talk
talk
about the color.
didn't talk about the color, and this
Okay,
in steep lots, color is referenced one of the few places. Tone of the hillside and
not white.
just night white, yeah.
Okay, which one is that? Guideline?
I've got a few here. You want some sections to cite? SL 2,
What one's good enough? Or 2A what?
2A2.
All right,
I've got a bunch, but
one more for color.
SL3A and 3B.
Okay, 3B. Okay, who wants to make the motion?
You got them all written in front of you.
Is that an excuse for me to make them?
Yeah.
All right, I'll try, subject to any friendly amendment if I get it wrong, because I think we're ready to close out. And we are going to agree with Darren's recommendation to approve the small scale new construction at 744 Primrose Lane, Lot 18, the overlook at Telluride subdivision PUDs, Telluride addition based on the staff memo dated February 19, 2025 with the following conditions. 1, edit to read as follows. Reduce the size and the grouping of the windows to be more traditional with verticality and separation similar to the west elevation and relate to pedestrian scale per DH 26A, B, and D.
25.
Oh, gosh, yeah, 25, A, B, and D. Number 2, as written. Number 3, on the south elevation, either pull back, excuse me, I'm sorry, either set back the second floor west bedroom 6 inches or bring the lower level on that southwest corner out 6 inches to further blend with the topography of the hillside per DH 18A 2 and 4. Was the old one. 4, verify plant list consistent with DH 11A intro 1.1 through 1.4. 5, revise the landscaping to reduce the formal linear alignment of the landscape per SL4-3. 5, update the material plant list to reflect the plan. And 6,
I'm sorry for interrupting. I'm a little lost. Number 4 was verify the plant list, and then number 5 was revise the landscape to reduce, and then you started talking about plants again.
oh, I see what I did wrong. Number 4 was verify the plant list. Number 5 is revise the landscape to reduce the formal alignment, linear alignment of the landscaping for SL4-3. And then number 6, which I called number 5, 6, update the material list to reflect the plan. And 7 is it's the roof. Ensure ballasted roof with material is not white or reflective per SL 2A2 and SL 3A and 3B. Revised plans incorporating the conditions of approval shall be submitted within 60 days or this approval, or it's null and void unless otherwise indicated. The revised drawings submitted by the CA must be complete set and as written. So unless we have any other edits or friendly amendments, which we got to clear up on.
Left off.
Huh?
Smoking is based on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, this motion is based on evidence testimony provided at a public hearing held on February 19th, 2025, and no such hearing provided as required by the Telluride Land Use Code. So are there any friendly amendments to this before we all offer a second?
I have a friendly amendment.
Okay.
I think it's to your item number 3 about the stepping of those masses.
Yes,
I would like to propose that we add an additional reference would be DH 24A1, which says a clear distinction between the foundation and wall material should be present.
I accept that. Okay, anything else? Not? We have a second?
Kieran, 1 second.
Okay, let's vote.
Kieran, yes.
Stacy, yes.
Matt, yes.
Mark, yes?
Bob, yes.
Okay, congratulations.
Finally.
Okay. We'll go on for the next project is 693 Pandora. We have some recusals.
Mark, I'm recused because I'm part of the applicant team. On the next 2.
Yep, I'm recused because my real estate affiliation with the owner.
And Stacy, this means good night.
I'm gonna go sit over there.
Oh, okay. Okay, so noted, 693 Pandora, it's consideration application for small scale new construction outside 50 HLD that will contain 2,500 square feet or more of floor area per land use code. Section 203B1A1, slot C1, East Pandora, a PUD and re-subdivision according to the plat recorded June 19th, 1985 in the plat book at page 564, County of San Miguel, State of Colorado. 693 East Pandora is the address, Unit A, it's residential zone district, PLK West is the owner. Applicant, Alpine Planning and Tommy Hine Architects. Staff member, Erica Jensen. Erica,
Great, thank you so much. Can everyone see my screen?
yes.
Great. So we're here for the review at 693 East Pandora. It is the first review for a small scale application. It is located in the residential zone district. The developing hillside treatment area and the steep lots design guidelines also apply. It is located outside the THLD. And the proposal is the new construction of a single structure with 2 dwelling units. Condition 1 is to significantly set back the 3rd level, and condition 2 is to step down the building to the side yards. So as you can see from this illustration, while there are some decks that could help with stepping, the 3rd level is not set back at all from the 2nd level, which greatly increases the massing and also creates this very long asymmetrical gable form, which increases the massing on both sides of the project. And then you can see from this is condition 2, step down the building to the side yards, that especially with the configuration of the project with what appears as 2 single family residences, there is no breaking up of the wall planes on the side yards, which increases the massing as well. Condition 3 is to revise the rear grading to better respect the steep hillside. Condition 4 is to revise the rear deck / patios to require less cut and fill to better respect the natural topography, as well as reduce the size of the retaining walls. And condition 5 is to reduce the height of the retaining walls at the rear of the project to better contour to the site. So the layout of this project has some rear patio deck access, and to achieve access to these decks, patios, there is a large amount of cut and fill proposed at the rear of the project. On the east side of the project, some of the retaining walls are over 13 feet, and it just does not respect the natural topography, and the steep lots design guidelines are pretty clear about really respecting the topography and reducing the cut and fill required. Condition 6 is to revise the west garage entry design to lessen the visual impact, and condition 7 is to revise the west driveway / entryway landing to contain less paving. So the west garage entry has a interesting atypical design, which slants a heavy stone towards the street, and it's not, a normal straight wall plane. And while this could help with stepping, I think with the material and the layout, it actually does increase the massing and draws more attention to the parking area. And then the west driveway has a large entryway concrete landing next to it to access the structure, and it creates a large amount of paving in the driveway area. Condition 8 is to reduce the size of the dormers, especially the length. So there are 2 large dormers on each side, which there is only 1 dormer. Well, there's 2 dormers, 1 on each side of the project, but they're extremely long in length. And when viewing from the side, it does increase the massing, and it's just not a typical configuration of a dormer. And then there's conditions 9 through 15. I'm not going to go into these because there are pretty large project problems with the massing, but I'm happy to further elaborate on any of these conditions if the board would like. And I'm also happy to answer any questions before we hear from the applicant.
Okay, questions?
I have one question, Erica. Is your concern, with number one, significantly set back the third level, is that primarily related to the roof, just the long shed form, a pretty massive roof? Is that
Yes, I think
more
it's,
that than wall planes moving?
I think
But
it's, I think it's both. It does create this large massing of the roof. I also think the steep lots design guidelines really do emphasize that third level should be significantly set back. And it just seems that with that strong of wording, there should be some sort of setback on the third level.
Okay, thank you.
There was, I'm reading the letter that.
Oh,
we
yes,
received.
I'm so sorry. We received public comment from Carrie Whitty as well, which was sent to the board. And Bob, I'm sure your question has to do with that.
That in the written description from the team, there was some concern about two things. One, the driveway that for the adjacent lot to the east cuts into the property. I believe it's an easement. Is there any encroachment on that at all?
I think the applicant might be able to speak to that better. I can say this project does respect the easements and the access required, but I think the applicants can speak to that
Okay.
more.
And then the other one, and I know it's technically not our purview, but it talked about, the duplex
Yes.
property, they're joined together. It does say that it can be, one of the things that they can be is joined together with a basement wall, but that's the only place where they join, underground.
I had the same question. Aaron is prepared to answer you.
Oh, good.
Go ahead, Aaron.
So is the question, how's it one structure?
Yeah, is
Okay.
that, I guess, I was reading, I was kind of thinking, is this a stretch or not?
I can't answer that, but I can answer that. So this PUD requires 2 dwelling units, which they do have. It also requires it to be one structure, which it is. It is attached below grade, and because of the size of the attachment based off our definition of attachment and also a planning director interpretation of below grade attachments, it is considered one structure.
Okay,
Thank you.
I just wanted to make sure
Yep.
we were all on the same page about that. Thank you.
Yep.
Oh, you have a question?
I have one other question, and I'm going to ask the applicant this, Erica. Maybe my primary concern with the project is just the sameness of the two structures. And I don't think there's anything in our guidelines that address that. And I'm just curious if there's any concern from staff on that, or if you think that's totally fine or don't have an opinion.
That's a tough question. I do think some of the conditions of massing and breaking up the wall planes might help to address some of that sameness. But it is atypical to see this type of arrangement. I do think that's more of an abstract idea, so it's hard to point to specific design guidelines to support that, but I could see why that would be a concern of the board.
Thank you.
And I just have one last question. I pretty much agreed with most of your 15 conditions, but the one I'm troubled by, and I'll turn it into a question. The stepping down the side yards. We got a lot of houses along there that they don't step down to the side yards. So, I mean, I don't know.
I think it's because because of the configuration of the project, there's 4 very tall wall planes without much articulation. So instead of having a typical project, we might see where there's 2, wall planes without a lot of articulation. There's 4, which I think is increasing the massing.
Well, 2 of the 4 are between the 2, which are no one's going to see, I guess, but the other ones could affect neighbors, I guess. Okay. Well, that was my question. I'm sure we'll discuss it. Any other questions? If not, we'll move to the applicant. Please go ahead and introduce yourself and share your screen.
Hi, Chris Hawkins with Alpine Planning.
Tommy Hine and Stacy Lake, Tommy Hine Architects.
Sorry. So thank you, Mark. That's a really good question that you started with, and that's one we have. What does this new SL standard mean? I think this is one of the first times we're seeing it applied on a project, and I think some discussion of that tonight from the committee that created those rules and what your intent was is going to be very helpful, because we had that same question. Aside from that, Matt, to answer your question right out of the gate, this design does not interfere with the access easement to Mr. Witty's property. The location of this, I think everyone's familiar with. This is the very beginning of the East Pandora PUD. It's the far west side of it. This is Mr. Witty's house right here. And one of the defining features of this lot, all the tough ones are left to the end, I think. I keep hearing that again and again, and this is certainly one of them. The slopes on this are, exceedingly steep. Some of them are well over 80%. There's actually rock outcroppings on this lot. Here's the access easement. It's this stipple pattern right here, if you can follow my cursor. And so we're not obstructing that access easement. This is an actual image of the plat that shows the East Pandora PUD. This is a higher zoned area than properties to the west of us, where 2 units or a duplex are required on each lot, and staff has actually made an interpretation that says you have to do a duplex. You can't even do a single family here if you want to. I don't know if that's changed or not, but that's something Erica told me on early on. So you're going to see a different development pattern in this PUD than you would around. The other thing that I think is very defining is there's 5-foot setbacks around most of the property, except for in the rear where there's a 10-foot. And this also functions as a utility easement. So we can't even put window wells in this setback. So it's way more restrictive than other homes, or other areas outside of the PUD. The overall massing strategy here. Tommy, do you want to talk about this since you did the design and you're there?
Sure. We can go back and forth. Yeah, the overall strategy here was to really step the mass up the hill with the topography. We actually pushed all the mass as far back into the hill as we could, respecting kind of the development pattern that was to the west, and then also kind of blending with what we anticipate being the development pattern to the east here. What we discovered in addressing this duplex concept, our initial, we did several schemes, obviously, and this was one that we landed on because, and you'll see in the streetscape, we thought that actually splitting the mass into 2 and being very truthful about the duplex idea, but also respecting the grid of town by creating these units that had an actual kind of a perceived side yard. So we separated the units with the 6-foot kind of void in between. And what we realized early on is that was a much more effective way to handle this mass rather than kind of jamming them together and having kind of a pyramid shape. There's one that does that a few doors down, but we thought this concept was much more respectful to the grid and actually broke the mass down and made the mass lower than if we were to do kind of a combined structure. So I thought that was a really interesting creative approach here that I would like the board to comment and hopefully support me on. In terms of Matt, in terms of being similar, what we've discovered over the years, we've done several projects, right next to each other. And historically, even in Telluride, there were projects that were done kind of next door to each other, and they had different defining features, maybe a different base element, which we've tried to do here with these garages. They had, but the most defining feature in the psychology that I've discovered over the years, the best way to differentiate between 2 structures or have them speak to each other but not be identical is to vary the materials. Yeah. So what we've done is very creatively kind of applied these materials that blend with the hillside, and they distinguish the different colors for the unit. And that psychologically, that's the best way to distinguish between units. And by sharing these elements, they speak to each other while the materials set them apart. Oh,
Yeah.
can you go back to the notes? I didn't think I
Yeah.
got everything. Oh yeah, and the side yards. Let's see, we talked a little bit about that, but mostly in these, this developing hillside, the stepping is really about stepping with the hillside. And in no way, these new SL guidelines, whatever they are, in no way have we ever attempted to step into the side yards. You see narrow developments that we've done all over. There's some on Curtis, there's some even on the Overlook. And the strategy is really to respect the side yards, but to step with the hillside and not also step down. So I am concerned about that even being just kind of thrown into the guidelines without maybe perhaps understanding the historical development pattern that we've had throughout town, or even with the developing hillside, especially with the amount of excavation. I mean, we've got to excavate 20, 30 feet just to have like a normal looking structure from the street. So you can go ahead.
Thanks, Tommy. Okay, so as far as the setbacks, these are actually shown on the floor plans. You can look for yourself. I understand and respect Erica's comment there. Level 3 is set back quite a bit from the one above. It's already about 12 feet from level 2 below. It might not be apparent from this side, but if you look at the floor plans, you'll see the setbacks for each level, with level 1 and 2 about the same setback. Then level 3 actually is about 3 feet more. And the major consideration of this really is the steep slopes over 80% and rock outcrops. One thing I would like to point out about the design is, when you look at the streetscape of this, how well it is tucked into the hillside, and relative to, our neighbor to the west, the lower roof berms, the lower profiles, and then how Tommy has proposed this below grade connection to kind of keep a grid structure overall for this duplex unit. It's very well fit into this streetscape in the lots, we believe. As far as the stepping itself, I know you could draw these lines anyway, but there is some level of stepping here, and you can see, especially in the hillside below grade, where they're stepping, because in order for this to happen, there's bedrock here, and this is going to take some level of excavation to get the bedrock out and this home constructed. So as far as the facades are just slightly over 25 feet, but they're close, 26 and 27 feet. And there's significant setbacks between the two units' wall planes. So, and the materials we really think minimize the width and the massing. And, in regards to that stepping of the side yards, again, what does that mean? And listening to that will be really important to us to understand that, how to go forward. And then, the two structures separated by wall planes and a void helps break it up further. As far as condition 3, 4, and 5, these are all about the retaining walls and the massing. If you've been out to the site, this is all a rock outcrop at the very top. So the very back of the lot where the home is going has this rather steep rock face. Someone actually built a cute little stair to get up here for some reason. But this is all rock outcrops. And so when you're looking at the home and how it's set into the site, what is being perceived as a big cut, the whole goal of that is to actually situate the home and have this backyard basically be the rock outcropping and not be retaining walls. That's our goal for this. And so when you see these cuts, this is going to be, exposed bedrock and look pretty cool in the backyards. I understand the concern there, but it's a different context when you understand the rock croppings and the ability to try to sink this into the site, keep a low profile home, and then also get some amenities that you typically associate with Telluride, decks and patios being part of it, And I think if you look at the design, you know, these are trying to be located up on the flatter roof forms in the back, with this just mainly trying to be the access in and out to get to these, and also minimizing that amount of cut. As far as condition 8, reducing the dormers, again, we feel they're appropriately scaled. They're subordinate to the overall form, and the slope can be reduced again, it can reduce the slope of the roof, would reduce the length if HARC agrees with staff on that. Again, this is just the front view. We think that's proportional when you look at this. Understand there's some comment. I did want to point out in here in the void, this shows, you know, we couldn't do egress wells on the outside like everywhere else in Telluride because the utility easement. So this is creatively getting the egress wells located on the inside between the two units. And then just finally, the design of this, you know, I happen to like this battered design myself. It's unique to Telluride. This is located outside the historic district. I think you can get a little bit more creative out here, and hopefully, you know, you like that design as well. And condition 9 regarding siding, and 10 regarding the corrugated metal. We understand that standard's there, but again, the overall concept is to blend the materials into the hillside, but create variation between units. And this was Tommy's comment. I've never considered blending in the hillside requiring a less rustic material. I think barnwood is appropriate where we've shown it on this project. So that's it. And there, the materials itself, if you have any questions, there's an exterior material sheet. Again, this is just showing the height compliance and the materials overall. And again, these in the back here that we're showing here, these are going to basically be partly existing rock outcrops and partially, you know, new cuts into the hillside where there's possible. So again, we having some degree of flexibility there, not understanding the full situation until excavation occurs as needed. Condition 11, the large clusters of glass on the south elevation. Again, in this one, Tommy used a very restrained glass hierarchy, combination of double doors at the bedroom and the dining room, a combination of triple doors with transom at the living room, and then smaller panels that are recessed 4 feet in the upper dormer. And it's, you know, it's an appropriate amount of glass when you look at this, I think, per elevation. And it's generally consistent with home glazing that's in the overlook subdivision above the property. When you look at it, you know, here's our glass. And then when you go to the overlook, you know, again, this is one home and we have a duplex, and, you know, our glazing is not nearly as much as this. This is a larger home. But when you look at between this and this, we feel it's an appropriate amount of glazing for each of the units, looking at them separately and together. If you agree with us on the massing and the stepping and so forth, we think it is generally approvable, because especially when you consider the rock outcroppings and the steep slope and how it does step up the hillside. And if you agree with that, we think it could be approvable. Understand that's your discretion. But if you do continue it, there's some desire to move on. I know this probably is out there a bit, but the March meeting would be lovely. With that, Tommy, do you have any final concluding comments?
No, I'm just,
Oh,
go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry. Also, I didn't get a copy of Mr. Whitty's letter. If that could be sent to us so we understand the extent of comments, and if we could please rebut any comments after Mr. Whitty makes them, because I see he is participating in the meeting.
Yes, I would just conclude at saying that, you know, our goals are really aligned with HARC and the guidelines. And I think this is a really appropriate project and a creative solution for this site that otherwise would have resulted in I think a much larger mass. And so I'd like to, I think it's a good project. And I hope to hear from you guys and get your support.
Questions? I'll kick it off, Lynn. How tall on the south elevation are the windows and the doors?
We could get those for you.
And somebody else can ask a question while they're looking that up, so we don't.
How tall are the windows on the south elevation?
Yeah, on that second floor, the windows and doors.
8 foot
Okay,
doors.
Trevor, are you looking that up too, or am I
got it.
if you're on?
8 foot doors?
8-foot doors with 18-inch transom, so 9.6.
Yeah,
And the glass is 9.6.
yeah.
Yep.
Which is important to get obviously get Bear Creek. That's all.
And those are 2/3 light because I can't see.
They are. Yeah, I'm zooming in on them. These are solid panels down low below the railings, Mark.
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions from somebody else, maybe? Elites or anybody? Questions?
I don't have any
Okay.
questions.
Before we lose, let me see if there's anything else that you might want to comment on that I might ask later. Were you referring to, of the 15 conditions, number 3 or 4, when you said, you know what, we might not even, well, at least I wrote down, it might not have retaining walls, it might be hopefully the natural rock back there. Which of those conditions, 3 or 4, were you referring to?
Hang on. Sorry.
Or
Probably
maybe it
number
was the height
4.
of the wall on 5.
It's really 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah, they're all,
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
So-
3,
Thank
4,
you.
and 5.
oh, how certain is that?
And maybe the staff misunderstood. It's basically a rock shelf that we're kind of going up into, and the rocks are there. Like the rocks create, there's no real need to put a wall. We just couldn't render, we had difficulty rendering the bedrock.
All right.
Do you have a section that
Yeah, we have a section
explains
through there.
that better? Because I don't think it really told
Yeah,
me.
because I didn't get it.
We have if you look at the west or to east elevation, we also can
Yeah,
give it to Trevor and do a fly around. We can do a fly through.
does the HARC want that? And I'll stop sharing.
Well, maybe this elevation will work. I'm trying to look for something on the rear side to help
It's the
me.
east elevation.
So this is the back view, kind of showing the extent of
Yeah.
where we are hopeful it's rock. That's shown at 13 feet, 7 3/8 inches, just on the south elevation view. Here's kind of more the east elevation here.
So that rock, that goes back to, that's where the setback is, and that's what we're anticipating will be a kind of this rough rock face, essentially.
But it is a retaining wall. You're adding some material.
We may have to. I don't think we will. We're going to be doing shoring below that. So, it could be.
Could you blow that one up again where the other one?
Okay, sorry, this is from the west side, what's the east elevation?
We're hoping to carve, attach into the bedrock that's there.
Yeah.
As our foundation.
Well, you have every incentive to do so for the owner, for the ambience, aesthetics.
Yeah, so the
Yeah.
idea is it's kind of this grotto. That was where the whole concept came from. It's kind of this grotto area that's
Right.
native rock in the
Got
hillside,
it.
and you move up along it.
Okay.
You got the
But-
spot.
But the grade you're showing there behind that tall concrete wall that's bedrock. It's all rough. It's not.
It's all rough. Yeah, it's all bedrock in that
And-
corner.
And the wall itself that's back there, the new wall you're showing, you would face that build that out of bedrock or
I don't
face it
think,
with it?
no, it's what we could achieve graphically, Bob. So, we probably should have shown the real rough edge, but we weren't able to.
So it's not a new wall, not contemplated.
It's only a wall to illustrate where the bedrock is.
No, all
If
right.
that makes sense. And you
Is
can see
there-
it from the photos. It's very rough. That
Yeah.
upper corner.
If there's any way to visually draw that so we can.
We will.
See
We'll,
what it
we'll do a
looks
better job. We didn't realize it was
Yeah.
so confusing.
That's so tall, it's just, we just don't do
Yeah.
that.
Tommy, do you have the ability to step that wall? Make it turn it 1 into 2?
You did, you'd break out the more rock, but we could, for sure.
Yeah, and in the end of that, there's gonna need to be some sort of drainage swale that captures that water from above. Or in these patios, one or the other, to where you're capturing the runoff before it comes to the house. So that could happen in the patios or it could happen above the walls too.
We'll figure that out, Chris, but go to the
Yeah.
site. I can show the HARC board. It's really just the corner. It's really just that northeast corner.
Yeah, let me go to the renderings.
Well, no, the site plan. The site plan.
Okay.
List. You can see the topos. So you can see it's just that corner is the worst spot where it's from 70.
Yeah.
That's the toughest spot on the whole site. And then it all goes down from there to the west.
It's pretty steep.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
I
That's
think we get it. We get it. So any other questions? Anybody? Okay. Well, let's hear from the public. And there's no one in the room, but I think there's some people that want to raise their hand electronically here. So please do that and unmute yourself, or Piper, you'll help them, I guess. Who would like to speak first?
Does everybody know how to raise their hand electronically?
Yeah, you go to on your computer to the electronic symbol of the hand, often under participants or other. I think there's somebody who wrote the letter who wants to speak.
Mr. Whitty is on there.
I know.
Doesn't have his hand raised.
No hands. Okay, I'm gonna give it going once. If you want to speak, raise your hand electronically. Twice.
Oh, we've got a hand raised.
Okay, here we go. Okay, Carrie, go ahead, unmute yourself, state your name and 3 minutes or less, please.
Well, that was stressful. Thank you. Yes, I believe my memo was shared with the committee. I'm not sure if the committee has had an opportunity to read through my memo. If not, I'm happy to.
No, we all did. And again, our purview is not whether it's a duplex or not, but we're welcome any design guideline input that you have.
Okay. So if I could just ask the committee, is it foregone that this project would move ahead then?
As a duplex, yes.
Okay.
Again, that's beyond our well, staff has spoken to that earlier in the meeting. So there's nothing we can do as a board. We don't adjudicate that.
Okay. I would take exception to Mr. Hawkins' comments about the requirement of being 2 units, because I think you'll find if you were to look down the street, there are in fact, and I'll apologize for my voice, I'm getting over the flu and not yet back, but I think you'll find that there are in fact single-family homes down the street. So I do think that statement of requiring 2 units is a misnomer. I would also take exception to his comment about the easement. I would only highlight to the committee, there's a technical drawing that we are all reviewing, and then there's a practicality as to how this space will be used. In my memo, you will note that I'm confident there is no scenario where any owner or guest would actually pull 2 cars into the garage as identified. In fact, they are going to leave one out on the pad, which is going to encroach my easement. So I can assure you, I'm just going to be in a constant battle with whoever buys this property to get in and out of my driveway. Summers are not going to be as bad. Days like today, I'm sure. I'm not actually there today. When snow on the ground, it would be extremely difficult if there's a car parked outside for me to even get into my driveway. I think you realize there is no street parking there, so the only option is to be in my driveway or in my garage. And the same is going to be true for these 2 units. So I take complete exception to Mr. Hawkins' commentary about the adequacy of the ingress and egress. If we're going down this path, I would propose to the committee and or to Mr. Hine, we've not met, a concession of flipping the plan whereby the garage would be on the east-facing wall versus the west-facing wall. That would preclude a lot of my concern, and I think clearly delineate my ability to get in and out of my own home. I don't know, as you can tell, if you've read my memo, you can tell I'm deeply disturbed by this project and hate the fact that it would move forward. But if we're already in the period of let's get the best design, then I think at a minimum, let's flip the design such that I'm not gonna be arguing with my neighbor. And absent that, I think you absolutely have to get rid of that, I don't even know how to describe it, the wall that everyone seems to love, diagonal wall coming off the garage is just gonna be a complete disaster. I know it may look good on a page, and I see Mr. Hine laughing, and look, two people can agree to disagree, but that is gonna be a complete disaster.
Well, thank you for your comments. Any other public comment?
I have one. I think what
Would you?
I'm sorry, this is
Read your name into the
I'm
record,
sorry.
please.
I'm Carrie. Oh gosh, I'm Carrie's wife, Joni.
Oh,
I just wanted to say I'm not sure that it was really explained correctly, but if we have to drive on the easement in order to get out of our driveway. I don't know if you have been up there, but the way the approach to our driveway is, we have to pull onto that easement. So anytime a car is on that parking pad, we're gonna have to go to the door, knock on the door, say, could you please move your car so I can leave and go out, or I can come back home. So while, they're not building the home on the easement, if a car is there, we will not be able to access. That's just a fact. We will not be able to access our own garage. Unfortunately, we can't pull straight out of our driveway because there's a hill. So that easement was to protect us to getting out of our garage. So I'd really encourage you to go up there and look at the site. The topography is not shown in these drawings of our ingress and egress. It's so difficult even now without a house there. So I can't imagine adding a driveway. We'll be stuck. We'll never be able to get in and out.
thank you very much for amplifying on that. And we do have drawings that show that, but I'm gonna ask the applicant to comment.
I didn't see any drawings that show our ingress and egress.
A05.
Yeah.
The survey.
Yeah.
And the survey. We haven't.
If you could go up there and physically look at it yourselves, I think you would see what we're concerned.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment?
I see no other hands.
Okay, would the applicant like the opportunity?
Yes. Thank
Sure.
you, Mark. If after I'm done speaking, Erica could confirm what she told me on this lot, that duplex is required by the town, that'd be helpful. I didn't, my training has been that you can do single families on duplex lots, but I respect and understand the town has a different interpretation of that. As far as the egress goes, I'm gonna share, sorry. See if I can share my screen real quick. So this is showing the access. I noted that we did inadvertently show a parking space here, but I just dimensioned off this distance, and this is 20 feet behind the garage. And, the access easement is over in this area. We'll clarify that with the final plan set where that access easement is, but the access comes in. You can kind of see their edge of pavement where it comes in here. And we definitely can't obstruct that. One outside of, getting rid of that parking space that's shown, which isn't needed, we can push that up further against the house, but better yet, and this is something obviously I haven't talked to Tommy about, we can, for the duplex townhouse plat, there's a declaration and bylaws that have to be created. And the declaration could be very specific to this unit about parking and not blocking that access easement. We could also, again, just putting up a sign there that's kind of tucked away or hidden, just to remind people not to block that easement up against the house. Those are just a few kind of good neighbor things that I think would be helpful overall. I can't speak of flipping the design or anything like that. That's a Tommy call for sure. But anyway, hopefully that's helpful seeing how they do have access right now.
Yeah, I think also, Chris, can you pull up the garage level? The Whitties, nice to meet you. I was just, I know Chris reached out to try to talk to you before this meeting, but it's nice to meet you anyways. And I assure you that our plan has all along been to be respectful of both your easement and also be respectful of the setback. You know, we were very careful to align our garage and have it lower than your garage element, which I know protrudes significantly from your main living area. So we did anticipate a lot of sensitivity that goes beyond the guidelines in terms of how we cited this west unit. It's about 6 feet lower than the east unit, and it's the garage is actually recessed so that it's slightly below grade on the west side. So we, in no way, from the very start of our design, we've completely respected your easement. And as a matter of fact, what we did in addition to that is we, with staff's comments that came later in the project, we added a tandem garage. So now we have actually 3 enclosed spaces on this site. In addition to that, there is street parking adjacent to our site. There are 2 to 3 spaces in the, if you look, Chris, if you go to the level 00 floor plan. So you can see here, we've got a tandem garage, level 00. So we've got a tandem garage, and then where it says East Townhouse, those are actually an additional 1.5 on this site. And I think there's about 3 parking spaces right there on Pandora. So I think we've thought about your easement, we've respected it. And on top of that, we're providing more than ample parking for 2 units. And there's also street parking on Pandora.
Would you lastly answer the applicant's question though, about the possibility of flipping it?
Absolutely not. I mean, we've considered all the design parameters. We've stepped these into the site, both north, south, and east, west. And the fact that this unit is lower, if you look at the streetscape, Chris. I mean, this isn't a guideline, but you know, we're significantly lower than your house on multiple levels and almost a full story below on the top level. My understanding also that your house was granted a height variance for those gable dormers at the time it was approved. Is that right, Chris?
That's correct. I found that in the record today.
So I would say, you should be very happy with what we've ended up doing, and that we've been nothing but respectful of your project, your house, and your access.
Okay, anything else? All right.
Whitty's hand is raised again. Do you want to hear from?
Well, I mean, they're only allowed
Mhm.
1 comment.
It would be setting a bad precedent. Moving back and forth.
Yeah, respectfully, we're gonna have to decline, but we certainly understand your point, and we're gonna be deliberating and talking about it. So you can listen in. And good chance this may come up again, so I got a feeling tonight's not the last night. Okay. So we'll start deliberations. I'm just gonna throw out some food for thought here and discussion. Erica's done a good job, 1 through 15. My questions are about number 2, which I helped write, which I'm not sure is applicable here in this particular neighborhood with the grid and the pattern. And 3, 4, and 5, I'm looking forward to the board's input on that. And same on 9 and 10, the barnwood and the metal siding. I didn't necessarily take issue with it, but, and I would agree on number one, the most important one, if we don't talk about anything else, is I think it could go back. I probably wouldn't use the word significantly, but could go back a little further. But again, I'll be interested in the board's feelings on it and, with respect to the guidelines. So who would like to go first? I just threw out some key items.
Well,
Into
go.
your mic, Bob.
oh, sorry. Always getting in the way. I agree with, Mark on number one. Stepping down the building of side yards, I just don't think it makes any sense in this particular case. I mean, I don't see it. 3, 4, and 5, I think Tommy knows what he needs to do to work on that and show it the way it really is, so we can understand it better.
Okay.
Let's see, what's good? Yeah, I think it's an interesting detail at the garage, but I think it's just so massive there that we should do something with that. Less paving. Well, there's parking on the street, there's extra spaces on the property. Maybe we could cut that down a bit, maybe have one extra space outside. Barnwood siding. I'm not even sure where you see that. It it's on the west building facade. I think it could be less rustic, yes. Metal siding, corrugated. There's not a lot of that either, I don't think. Glass, yes, I think the glass needs to be reduced. South facade, yes. Landscape plan. I think what he's got going here, I think blends in quite well. In the early discussion at the beginning, we were talking about differentiating the buildings, and I think he's done a good job with the materials. I've seen that before on other projects. One of the things that I know, a project that you did on, I think it was yours, on Columbia, the two buildings were identical. And we asked you to differentiate them more. And one of the things that was done was articulate the decks differently. So that I think you did different material on the railing or something on one of them, different from the other one, different shape. You know, they weren't identical. I think that helped to differentiate the two buildings so they don't, I mean, they're very similar in mass, everything, but it helped to reduce that apparent duplication, for lack of a better term. So I think he's got some work to do. I think it should be continued and.
All right.
And
Size of the dormers, you didn't comment. She suggested they should be reduced.
I think they could be reduced a bit. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, who wants to go next?
I'll go. I think first of all, Tommy asked this question. I very much appreciate that they, instead of building one big house, they broke this up. I think that's can't be understated how that helps to break down the mass and scale of this project. And I think that to me sets the tone to be more lenient with, say, number 2 on Erica's, or at least with its internal facades. I could see still asking for some articulation on the east and the west of the entire property, but maybe we're talking about 6 inches, a foot wall plane changes, which I think they already have to some degree. So I think that's fantastic that they started from that position. I think we'd have a bigger battle if they did a bigger house here. I think the retaining walls, 3 through 5, I'm kind of understanding the discussion. To me, it seems like maybe we want to ask them to design for some sort of a stepped wall condition, or assuming that they can kind of carve out of that wall instead of needing to support it, but maybe recognize that they're not gonna know what they're gonna get until they're in construction, and there might be some CA amendments and about what they
And I
can
think
do.
just showing it more accurately, what's there now, so we can see what's going on. And, you know, we could have a note that.
I agree with
Once you dig into it, if there's a way to step it more, great.
I was torn with the sort of the sameness. I would love it if they found a way to differentiate the project a little bit more in the massing, especially on second to third levels. But hearing that you don't have an issue with it makes me not as concerned about that. With probably the major item number one, to me, it's I think I'm sort of agreeing with what Mark said. Maybe it's not as significant, but I think they could look at changing that roof form versus setting back the third level. I think that could be an and/or situation. I think it's primarily that large
Long
shed
slope.
roof, which is responding directly to 17A. Roof slopes that reinforce the slope of the hillside are encouraged. So it seems like that's what they're trying to do, but we're having a reaction, you know, staff, and we are sort of having a reaction to it, I believe. So I think there should be some work done there. The other, look at my notes real quick. So with the materiality on number 9 and 10, and I think I've said that I am generally more in favor of being a little more lenient on materiality than maybe the rest of the board. So I'll admit that. But if we look at policy 19, because this area is establishing its own character and context, there will be a greater latitude in terms of detailed architectural design. Designs that blend in with the character of the natural hillside and material, color, and texture are encouraged. And this is about as rugged as a site that you can get in town.
True.
Now, this is directly contrary to a lot of the policies in 21, which seem to be more boilerplate, talking about particular situations in town that are historic. Personally, I am fine with the materiality that they propose. I think this more rustic material in a rougher, more challenging hillside is quite appropriate. And I think number 19 supports that.
I guess the one thing about, you know, the barnwood siding is if it's like reclaimed barnwood siding, you've got colors on it and weird stuff. If it's a rough wood, I think that'd be great.
I agree.
Fine with that.
I agree.
You know, so maybe just add non-reclaimed barnwood siding.
Fine with that. And those are all the major comments I had. I generally agree with all of the rest of the staff's comments and what you added on to, Bob.
Okay, others?
Well, maybe we could, dealing with the dormitories, the dormers, the long shed roof. Maybe we could do a condition that talks about just more differentiation between the two. It might be that, for example, that covered patio that has a little gable roof that sticks out. Maybe they're not the same.
I would love to see that, but I poured through the guidelines, could not find a condition anywhere that talks about sameness or duplication.
But we don't have this kind of situation very often, you know, where we have two buildings being built brand new next to each other. And
so
I don't know where you get, I don't know where you find it either.
I think on number one, we've got a chance to further differentiate, I think is your point anyway.
Mm-hmm.
In the dormer, the slope of the roof and or setting it back from the other unit in the east. I'd say let's see what they come back with.
Yeah. And use that to
They're hearing
differentiate
us.
them a little
Yeah,
bit.
they're hearing us. And
Change the railing, like you,
Mhm.
I don't know.
I agree. I think the sentiment that I'd like to see is that there are some different, more adjustments and tweak with the massing, some of the architecture differentiate them slightly. I don't think it needs to be dramatic.
Mhm.
I didn't comment so much on the dormer. The dormer feels large in the context of the homes, but if you, Chris, can you put the streetscape back up? I think in the context, street profile in the neighborhood, they're not that big compared to the rest of the homes around. So I think some reduction would be nice in the dormers. I don't have. feel
Not a
strongly
huge
about it.
amount.
Sorry. There you go.
Chris, we also have some images if you want to pull those up, Trevor.
I think we've got a feel for this. We don't need to see any more slides. I think unless somebody wants to. Okay. So Kiernan and Alita,
Sure.
final comments, 1 through 15.
Yeah, generally agree with 1 through 15 with the, thought that, looking at 3, 4, and 5, when the plan becomes more visually, representative, that's not a retaining wall.
Two.
2, I mean, it's a guideline. And so I,
Well, I
like to
was
see it
in
addressed,
I was in
but-
the room.
Yeah, I know.
Me too.
These 3 amigos who wrote this guideline. And this is not what we contemplated, the type of neighborhood with the on the grid. It was stuff maybe higher and more alone on the hillside and bigger mass and scale, but so I'm good with it.
Well, I think it's kind of what Matt was suggesting.
Yeah.
You look at the outside too walls and see if there's any kind of articulation that can be done there, something to address it in some way, shape, or form. I imagine you had a reason for putting it in.
It wasn't this lot.
Well, okay,
Neighborhood.
but we don't write the design guidelines thinking of a specific lot.
I would agree with Kieran to leave it in. I don't think they need to do, they're already doing some stepping, looks 6 inches, maybe a foot, at least on one of these elevations.
Back or articulate, what are you thinking?
I think they're hearing us discuss it, and as we can scrutinize it a little bit more next time, whether it's enough stepping or not. I don't want to see vertical wall planes here, but I don't also think we need whole rooms of stepping.
Could we narrow it to the east wall, which is where it faces the new neighbor someday?
I would,
Between the houses, you don't need to do it. You can't even see in there.
I wouldn't, necessarily think between the
East and
two
west?
houses, but yeah, the east and west exterior.
All right.
that's what I would think.
Yeah,
East west.
exterior of the project. Regarding the materiality, I think the guidelines there are pretty specific and clear, so I would leave those in. 9 and 10. Strict constructionalist when it comes to these guidelines. So.
Okay.
Yeah, have I answered it all?
Alita, bring us home.
I generally agree with staff and what Matt had to add to the conversation. With condition number 9, agreed with again Matt and Bob's comment. I'm okay with the barnwood as long as it's non-reclaimed barnwood actually. Not too excited about these 2 buildings looking so alike. And again, cannot find the appropriate wording from design guidelines. The only part is in the introduction where it says that the developing hillside treatment area focuses more on respecting the natural environment and minimizing visual impact of the development. And I wonder if by repeating the same form, it does exactly that. And if we can create more variation, it minimizes visual impact. I'm not sure if that is true or not. So that's all I have to say.
Okay. And I would say to try to be consistent, that I can think of at least 4 side-by-side houses that are new. That it's pretty much flipping the decks, or like Bob says, changing the railings, some different window configuration and the materiality change, and we have approved them.
So you're thinking that the current massing architecture is good, it's good enough, there's enough differentiation between?
No,
Oh, you're not?
not
Okay.
necessarily. I mean, I think when they change number 1,
Uh-huh.
they've heard us. I think they can add some
I think-
differentiation.
I agree.
Enough. I can picture what that might be. But we're gonna see it again.
Doesn't have to be drastic.
Yeah, and if it's still too cloned, then we'll have at it. Okay, so I want to take a quick straw poll before a motion. So do we agree on number 1, just to delete the word significant and say further setback? I thought that's what I heard from, just further setback, not substantial.
Get rid of, so you're just saying setback the 3rd level,
Further.
I said further setback.
further setback. I agree with that. Could we add and or break up the primary roof form?
Sure.
I don't think they necessarily have to move that 3rd level back if the roof form is.
And
Say that
or,
again.
and or do what to the roof form? The west building?
So further set back the 3rd level and or break up the primary roof form.
Okay. I think, let's try it. Let's
Maybe I should
give them some man.
plural
Okay.
forms.
Number 2, we're gonna, okay, get ready to make a motion, okay? Keeping up.
I can't write this fast enough.
Okay.
Okay,
Try.
I'm not gonna do all 3 of them.
Yeah, okay.
And under 2, we're gonna change it to east-west side yards. I thought I heard consensus. 3, 4, and 5, we're kind of see what they came back with. And the last 2, 9, I would agree with the non-reclaimed barnwood. 10, I don't even really see much corrugated, but straw poll, are we okay with one at a time, non-reclaimed barnwood?
Yes.
I'm good with it.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. And then
That's all right. I'll just
Corrugated.
resign, Mark. It's all good.
the corrugated metal.
I would strike number 10.
Okay.
I don't
Straw poll.
think there's anything on the front of the building
No.
that I can see.
The guideline encourages it to be on the lower sections, but is it somewhere on the upper
I
section?
don't know where it is.
It's on the east and west walls, and it does, I believe, extend to the 3rd or 4th level.
Let me revise. I would say that we could either strike it or say consider replacing.
Well, you know what's gonna happen with that.
I think it was appropriate for Erica to put these guidelines in. I just am finding the counterpoint in number 9.
7. Material number 7.
You wanna use consider?
I got, just want to look at it. Let's see where it is.
Well, we're not trying to handcuff. Let's let them come back and respond in good faith.
It's on the back. A little bit on the,
But Erica's point is, how many feet tall is that corrugated on that? What drawing is that best viewed, Erica?
A 3.5 shows a good view of it.
Okay, got it.
and-
Yeah. Oh.
it's number 7 is the corrugated. Yeah. Looks like, well, the big part there is 2. It's the little bump. Right near the stairway.
Which is recessed back.
Which is, okay.
I would think that, I would say the rusted would be okay, but I don't think the unfinished ones.
You mean,
You mean the board form or?
No, the vertical metal.
so replace corrugated, as she said, with rusted?
It says rusted or unrusted.
So they're proposing both. There's vertical corrugated siding that's just gray bonderized, and then there's rusted corrugated siding as well.
Bob, what are you saying?
I would say.
You okay with rusted?
I would say replace the corrugated metals, well. Replace the corrugated unrusted metal siding
Oh,
to be a more appropriate material
okay.
and delete the word rusted, that the rusted is okay.
Yeah,
That's what I'm trying to say.
okay, so replace the corrugated metal or allow corrugated metal and
Allow,
rusted.
uh,
What are you saying?
I would say, allow, rusted corrugated metal siding. And then eliminate, and unrusted to a more appropriate material.
Okay.
Would you just say replace the unrusted corrugated metal siding to a more appropriate?
Yeah,
material?
that's fine. Cause then you could do rusted or you could do something else.
Okay. All right, so we're keeping the essence of it in, and
For number 9, would you say revise the barnwood siding to be a less rustic material and not reclaimed?
That'd be good way to say it.
that's perfect. And it's the same condition. I already looked at it. 21A2. And then almost done. My notes. Yeah, I think we have it.
Would you like me to make the motion?
Please.
There was a request, I think, made, I don't know if it was a request about the going to April or going to March instead of April.
I think we need to go to April and respect. Erica went through the backlog a little bit with me. We got other continuances that are already coming up.
Okay.
I think we need to give them their shot. But globally, I would say, when you look at our purview, and we're not going to put this in a condition, but just be sensitive to the public comment and concerns and all our concerns on this drawing showing the parking from the top view from a drone or side view. If somebody doesn't pull in the garage, these people can't get out. But somehow there's gonna has to be something more than a neighborly sign that says, please move your car. I mean, I feel for them, but there's nothing we can do. So go ahead.
Okay, I move to continue to the April 16th, 2025 HARC meeting, the small scale new construction at 693 East Pandora, Lot C1, East Pandora, based on the staff memo dated February 19th, 2025, with the following conditions. Number 1, further setback the third level and or break up the primary roof forms per DH number 16A 4 and 6 and SL number 1A 1 and 2. Number 2, step down the building to the east and west side yards per SL 1B3. Number 3 through 8 as stated. Number 9, revise the barnwood siding to be a less rustic material and not reclaimed per DH 21A2. Number 10, replace the unrusted corrugated metal siding to a more appropriate material per DH 22A6 and SL 3A3. Number 11 through 15 as stated. This motion is based on evidence and testimony provided at a public hearing held on February 19th, 2025, with notice of such hearing provided as required by the Telluride Land Use Code.
I'll second that.
Okay, Kieran,
Kieran, yes.
Matt, yes?
Mark, yes.
Bob, yes.
Lisa.
Elita, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, 5-minute bio break and we'll get ready to get right into the last project. with the Halsted overlook. It's consideration of application for small-scale new construction of a principal structure outside the THLD on a lot with a pre-construction greater slope of the building site coverage of 25% or greater, regardless of floor area per land use code 7203B1A3. It's lot 16 at the overlook at the Telluride subdivision PUD, according to the plat recorded August 30th, 2018, under reception 454591, County of San Miguel. Address is 724 Primrose. It's in Hillside Developing 2, second project in a row. The owner is Benden Meadow LLC, a Colorado LLC. Alpine Planning and Tommy Hine Architects are the applicant, and staff member Erica Jensen. Erica?
There we go. Thank you. All right, let me share my screen. Can everyone see my presentation?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so we're here for the review of 724 Primrose. It's HARC's first review. It is a small scale project. It is located in the Hillside Developing 2 zone district, the Developing Hillside treatment area. The steep lots design guidelines also apply. It is located outside the THLD, and the project description is the new construction of a single family residence. Like the last project, there are a large number of conditions. There's 18 conditions. I'm going to be going over the ones I think are most pertinent to HARC and the ones mainly revolving around mass and scale and respecting the natural topography of the site. So condition 1 is to revise the building form to reinforce the natural topography of the site. Condition 2 is to revise the building forms to minimize the perceived mass and scale. Condition 3 is to revise the roof forms, primarily the gables, to better reinforce the slope of the hillside. And condition 4 is to revise the roof forms to reinforce the slope of the hillside and minimize the impact to the character of the area. So this project is pretty sunken into the hillside, especially from Primrose, where from the previous slide, you can see that it's not very visible, but the main visibility comes from the south. And there's multiple gable forms, which increase the height and the visibility. Gables aren't as common in this treatment area, and while they are allowed, they do increase the massing and generally do not reinforce the topography of the site. Condition 5 is to better step down the west facade to minimize visual impacts. There is some wall plane articulation on the west facade, and it is broken up and does step back, but because of how the forms are stacked on top of one another, when you're looking at it from the south, it does appear as a very large, tall form. So either stepping down that west facade or somehow breaking up that massing would help minimize the visual impacts. Condition 6 is to revise the size and number of retaining walls to reduce the alterations to the perceived topography and visual impacts. There are a large number of retaining walls on this project. On the east side, there's retaining walls at over 11 feet and 12 feet, and you can see by the rendering that it does, really cut into the topography instead of the topography coming and meeting the building. There are a large number of retaining walls and then open space next to the structure. And then on the west side, there's a retaining wall over 8 feet and then another one at over 12 feet. Condition 7 is to remove the level yard from the southeast corner to better respect the steep hillside and natural resources of the site. And condition 8 is to replace the sod with a more natural landscape scheme. So this project is proposing to level off a large amount of topography to create a level yard, which is not allowed per the steep lots design guidelines. And this leveling of the yard and adding sod doesn't respect the natural hillside and does not keep with natural landscape scheme, which is preferred in this treatment area. Condition 9 is to drive the gable and shed form at the garage to minimize visibility. And condition 10 is to revise the parking area to have less of a visual impact by consolidating or combining and also reducing the massing. So the garage from the front does appear that it could be reduced in height. And while it doesn't seem as large from the streetscape, when you look at the southern facade, having the added height on the garage does increase the massing of the structure, and perhaps lowering the garage would help reduce the massing and help it blend in with the hillside a little more. There is also a carport that is separate from the garage on the other side of the project, and having this carport and the garage does increase the visibility of the parking area, and it would be helpful if those two were consolidated together. And then there are conditions 11 through 18, which have more to do with light spill, glazing, materials, and I'm happy to elaborate on any of those conditions if HARC has questions. And I'm also happy to answer any questions before we hear from the applicant.
Okay, thank you. And actually, thanks for going through 1 through 10. I think, we're most likely going to see this again. So certainly 11 through 18, Tommy knows what those are all about. Questions for Erica?
Oh, what date to continue it to?
Oh, what date would that be, Erica, knowing the schedule and looking at the backlog?
I think because this project has a large number of conditions and pretty major concerns about respecting the natural topography and the hillside, I would recommend 3 months.
Okay, is April full?
April, we have not made the agenda for April yet.
Okay, well, let's see how it goes.
Mhm.
And we'll go from there. But I know March is full, so, okay. No questions? All right, then let's hear from the applicant. Please go ahead and start the record and share your screen with your
Yep.
names.
Yep. Hi, Chris Hawkins with Alpine Planning. Tommy, you want to?
Oh, excuse
Tommy's
me,
there
Tommy.
too. Tommy and Stacy.
Tommy
So,
Hine
I'll
and
give it.
Tommy Hine Architects.
Thank you. So sorry, let me get this going. So the site itself, I think you all are really familiar with the Overlook subdivision and PUD. I just wanted to point out, these are all the uphill lots, and there's been quite a few design review applications that have come into them, and those are the kind of typical town grid lots. And then, all these lots are allowed on the uphill side a ratio of roughly the 3-to-1 volume. And then you have the downhill lots right here. These downhill lots are allowed a 6-to-1 ratio pursuant to the PUD. And then this lot, which is our subject lot we're talking about tonight, is limited to a 3-to-1 building volume, interestingly. It's kind of treated the same as the uphill lots, even though it's a completely reverse orientation. And we're going to talk more about that this evening. As far as the slopes go, pretty steep. You've got the 50 to 55% steep slope areas. Well, I'm kind of zoomed in here. This shows the Overlook Trail going out, down the middle here, and here's a sign. And there's a public trail easement that goes out, what would be the access track. This is a 27-foot wide access easement. Sorry, let me go back.
Could you point that out? I couldn't see that.
Yeah, hang on. So here's the, this is the 13.5-foot access easement that's shared with the Overlook subdivision lot. Can you see my cursor right here? Sorry.
No. Oh, there it is. Okay, across the top.
Yeah, 13.5, and it mirrors it on the other side too. They have a similar easement there. So you have 13.5 feet on either side, and so it was the extension of this driveway. And so you've got that, and then, we can't do any parking in here. And this is really one of the most interesting elements of this, lot design. I don't know how much this was tested out when this lot was created, but when you basically have the edge of your building area set back 13.5 feet from the edge of the driveway, it has the effect of having all your starting elements floating off the ground. And this is just an image of the steep slope lots. So I already talked about the building volume and the ratios, you know, and it's just been a really difficult design process. Tommy, I'm sure, is going to talk more about this because he's been living and breathing it for a while. And then, you know, the HD2 zone district also requires 3 on-site parking spaces in this project based on the number of bedrooms. And those all have to be on-site. And we don't have the ability to park them in the access easement. So all these factors play into the design. So, you know, on the downhill lots, this is the only one that's 3-to-1. Oh, sorry, I've already talked about that stuff. So the garage and carport area for the 3 parking spaces are floating 3 to 7 feet in the air when you're having that driveway come through, and where they touch on the side, they're already up 3 to 7 feet in the air. And the southern side of the garage area is about 18.5 feet up in the air. So you have to basically, you know, fill in there to do this design. And then, so your home has to flow from where you have to park down the hillside. It's like, that's your access, that's your starting point, and everything else cascades down. And so this results in the living area having a height limit of 1 story or thereabouts, and the main living space being 2 stories below the shared access drive. And this is the only lot in the PUD. It's like on the uphill side, I think you all are used to having your garage and it's stepping up the hillside. This is just the opposite, where you have your garage and it's stepping down the hillside. So when you look at it that way, I think it puts a little bit different lens on it for everyone to think about. And this is, Bob, this shows the access easement platted better, where you see the full 27 feet.
Yep.
And so, you know, this is where you're starting the design. The stepping on this, I think, is very apparent how we're stepping. This is the 31-foot parallel slope, and we fit underneath that slope. And then you've got kind of the outline of the building below. And you kind of see how it has to get built up, you know, to basically, this all has to get built up to have it. So we're already going to have a taller retaining wall here as it comes down the site. Tommy, you want to start talking about design a little bit, since you have been living and breathing this more now, or?
Sure. I think the biggest point to make here is that most of the DH guidelines are set up for moving in low with the garage and then stepping up the hillside. And I think here, the idea that the requirement of these 3 spaces was an incredible challenge. I mean, the overlook didn't do an access or extend the road. So we had to go through, I think it was a 6 to 9 month process just to negotiate the access to this lot with the uphill neighbor. The uphill neighbor, which was HARC approved, wanted the road to slope up with the topography as it went towards the end of this site, which was in direct conflict to our design goals, which were to go down and to try to get that parking as low as possible on the ends. So we were able to eventually negotiate, but it still rises up and then slopes from the north to the south to the site. That drove, you know, we also tried with the neighbor to get some parallel spots approved. And we had made some headway on that, because that would have helped this design significantly to have parallel spots along the access track. Instead, we were then forced to create 3 spots, which were required by the PUD. And essentially, the 3 spots float above the earth from a matter of 7 feet. So by the time you get to the setback, you're 7 feet above grade. So by the time you're parking just a normal car, you're almost 18 feet above grade. So, you know, we really had to look at this from the top down and the bottom up. The volume calcs, when you look at the volume calcs, I disagree. Well, I disagree with staff's interpretation, because the whole idea of DH on this block is that the volume determines the massing. So because the volume was so low on this site, inherently the massing we're dealing with was less than any other of these sites that you've seen. You saw tonight, one of the other lots down the street from this, which were granted an increase in the volume because they recognize and acknowledge the challenge with these downhill sites. For some reason, this lot was left off of the bonus volume that we should have received. So we are really handcuffed on volume. And in my mind, when we talk about volume, a gable, a shed, a flat roof, it really doesn't matter. It's all about stepping forms down the hillside because you're dealing with a fixed volume to meet the land use code here. So whether it's a shed or a flat roof, in many ways, a shed or a flat roof, you could actually have a higher plate. So you could actually, from the downhill side, you would see more wall mass than you would with a gable. So we studied the gable and shed volumes, and DH encourages gable and shed volumes. There's even photographs, I think, of Rollison, which is down the street from me on Galena.
Yeah.
You know, stepping gables down the hillside being an appropriate solution. And we've done many projects in town that respect the north-south grid of the block and also step down the gables. So the overall strategy here was not, it wasn't really about gables and shed, but it was to create kind of a main mass on the west, which was furthest away from the other sites, then have a connector, and then to a 1.5-story element containing the master on the east side. And what that does is it separates the overall mass into three distinct forms that are then collected with these combined shed elements. I mean, it's our job as architects to not just plop boxes on the hillside here, but to compose beautifully these forms that recall the historic elements of Telluride and collect them in a way that's sensitive, but also is cohesive so that it all looks like one house and it's not a disjointed jumble of forms or prefabricated boxes like I'm seeing down the street.
Yeah.
You want to jump back in here on the map?
Yeah, thanks. So as far as the massing, I just wanted to show on the right is 875 Primrose, where you have the garage over here on the left side and the house stepping up. And ours, it's, if you look at this and flip it, it's like you have, you know, here we have to have our driveway and access up top, as if, imagine if the road was on this side and then it cascading down the hillside. This is kind of a similar situation, although it's just reversed. And that's kind of what we were talking about earlier. And, you know, as far as design goes, we think it's clearly a modern design. It doesn't replicate historic styles. There's not highly ornamental details. And, you know, the reform, I know that one shed reform has caused some concerns, but again, as Tommy said, he feels it's an appropriate tie-in to the overall design and reform. You know, as far as the thoughtfulness of this, I think by the time you're done with your discussion, you understand that. And, you know, Tommy already commented how these design guidelines, you know, for a downhill site, you just have to flip it. They're not really built for that. So, you know, we want to really have this discussion with you and talk about the massing and what works for the site. And as far as the HARC conditions, you know, 1 through 4 are kind of massing stuff and reforms, you know, to reinforce the natural topography, minimize perceived mass and scale, gables, you know, and then the forms. So it is a low profile home, with most home well below the maximum height. It does step down the site. I think you can easily see that. And then most of the living space is below grade to the extremely limited volume calculations. Tommy mentioned the Rollison house, and that really appeals taller. And, you know, again, even with the steep drop off, if you're going down the side, it's about the same number of stories you see on an uphill site at the overlook. So we think all that's, you know, pretty much together. And the DH-17 allows traditional roof forms. It says, although traditional roof forms are preferred, low pitch roofs or vegetative roofs may be appropriate in some cases. So this is more specific than the new SL standards and gets at what we think has been the case and has been accepted and can be accepted up there. Gable forms are certainly more traditional forms. This is the Rolson residence showing stepping up. And again, I think you're seeing that same sort of low profile massing coming up. And then Tommy already talked about the, HD zone district limiting volumes. I'm not going to get that, into that right now. But it was created to limit the above grade massing. And I do believe that is an important consideration. That was the whole goal of having that detailed HD2 layers and the whole discussion when the PUD was created about allowing certain building volumes, and we fit within those building volumes. This is a new height diagram. You didn't have this in your packet. Town staff wanted this, and this shows the planar heights above pre-construction grade and post-construction grade. And, on both instances, we're well below that, around and throughout the site. In terms of DH16A, I think we have the step building forms. It's cut into the hillside, and there's 1-story elements on the lower level. The 1-story parking elements at that upper level, the garage that Tommy's proposing is no higher than the garage you just approved today. That massing sticks out more than this. If you look at the streetscape down the block, there's no doubt that massing is sticking up more here. The only difference is we have a downhill element to this lot that those lots don't have. And there's certainly articulation in the wall planes. In terms of stepping down the facade to the west to minimize visual impacts, again, this SLB3 and how it applies here, we look forward to hearing your comments. But when you look at the massing model, as Tommy said, it cascades down from west to east and, follows the hillside down from the highest element of the parking garage. And there's certainly a lot of changes in wall planes. I'm not sure where else in the overlook PUD you're required to step down to, the side yards. And again, some clarity on that and how it's to be applied will be helpful. In terms of, low profile, most of this home will be viewed against the hillside except for the garage elements. But even that, you're going to have the hillside backdrop behind it. So I think it's really important to look more at colors and materials. And then, how Tommy stepped down the hillside also lowered the visual massing. Conditions 6 and 7 regarding the retaining walls in the yard. The amount of retaining walls for this project appears less than approved across the street for 725 Primrose. And the yard area that's proposed reduces the visual impacts on its own by having, 1.5 stories. And the wall heights have been minimized. And this is the one across the street. Again, this is showing the retaining walls stepping up on the side. This is the visual rendering showing all the walls and all the extent of the walls you can see on both sides. And this is, again, more on the east side showing it stepping up. Again, quite a bit of retaining walls built in here. I'd say it was probably less than what we have, but I haven't done calcs. One other thing I wanted to point out is retaining walls were used to create a flat deck up here, and we're just proposing a more natural response to that on the lower level to have a small yard for his family in. And if we need to mitigate that with some plantings or bufferings through landscaping, we can easily do that. But it's a reasonable request to try to have some level of there and terracing. As much as you can have a flat deck with retaining walls, we think you should be able to have a flat yard with retaining walls as well. This shows the retaining walls as proposed. Erica went through this again on the east side and west side of the home. This just outlines them. So I think you can again see in comparison to the project across the street, it's fairly similar. This one might be a little bit larger than the others just due to its size, but we can minimize that clearly with landscaping and colors and materials. And this is the west side showing the stepping. We have to have this because, again, you're floating out in space. There's really no choice here. A rather modest drop here. I know in the back you're counting the total wall height here. I mean, the alternative to this is you have to turn the wall and you're going to have more site disturbance if you turn the walls perpendicular to the house versus trying to follow grade. Again, this is, in my opinion, a way of reducing and minimizing visual impacts of walls while at the same time blending in. And then again, this is over on the wall area. Again, we can look at a different colored stone here or landscaping or ways to break this up. But again, your choice here is you're going to have walls going out this way, which are going to be facing more into the town versus walls that have stone that blends into the backdrop on those. And I already talked about the flat deck area up on that deck. Again, we already talked about the gable roof forms. And if you actually combine these two parking spaces together, between the carport and here, you're going to get a heavier massing instead of stepping down, because the carport coming off of this versus having it broken up and cascading down the hillside from a west to east direction is going to be the impact of that. So we look forward to your thoughts on that. And then we already talked about the parking. I'm not going to get into that. So, and then the long shed roof form, again, I think this is what the concern was with staff, was on the backside, that one that comes in, and Tommy already articulated earlier why that was very important to the design and how the overall flow from those upper levels to the lower levels and how it all ties in together into the living spaces. So I'm not going to be repetitive of that. Tommy, do you have anything to add?
Well, I just wanted to tell the board, I mean, what was interesting to me about this project and the memo is that I agree and I understand all of these guidelines. And that's what we designed this project under. It's strange to me the way it's being interpreted by staff, because I think it's a really creative solution to an incredibly challenging site. And, you know, in terms of stepping down and low profile, it's nothing but, I mean, when I compare this to other projects in the Overlook or DH, I mean, this thing hugs the slope. It literally hugs the slope. And when you combine that with the volume calcs and the limitations, I'm a little bit perplexed at why this isn't being received more graciously or more positively, considering the effort and the understanding we put into this. And then Scott,
Okay.
You want to share anything? Scott, sure. Yes.
Is this public comment or?
Scott's part of the app. This is the owner, Scott Halstead.
Okay. Yeah, what's your last name?
Halstead, H-E-L.
Okay.
Go ahead and just read your name in the record there.
Scott.
It should be.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes. So Scott Halstead, the owner of the lot. So just, I mean, a lot's been said already, so I'll keep it super brief. Just a couple of comments. One is that, you know, as we've indicated, volume restrictions are a really big deal here. It's really hard. And I think I would ask the committee to give us some flexibility, whether we use gables, whether we use flat roofs, whether we use shed roofs. Feels to me that if we've met the volume restriction, that was the intent. And so I'd ask for some thought on that. It does feel a bit like we're being pushed to design a house that looks like several other houses up there in the Overlook, which, you know, are very rectilinear. They're big square boxes. Frankly, they look like ocean liners. That's my view of them. And so I think, you know, as Tommy said, I think we've come up with, you know, we could have designed a house here that had another story and 10-foot plates and flat roofs. And I think that would have been more mass and more glazing. And so we intentionally didn't do that. We actually looked at that design and we chose not to go that way. So I guess I'd ask the committee to give us a little thought to the fact that we intentionally are not looking like the other houses up there in the PUD. And the last point, which is, and again, Tommy and Chris have both mentioned this, there are several other examples of other houses that have been recently approved by the committee that, you know, feels like we're being a bit penalized for those, that you know, in terms of height of walls, in terms of stepping down the hillside. You know, Chris put some slides up there before, but I feel like we're being penalized because we don't look like the other houses up there. And I'd ask you to think a little creatively as opposed to just having a bunch of houses on that hillside that all look like square rectilinear boxes. And my last comment, which is maybe deaf ears, but having waited 6 months just to get here, I think getting pushed to May is not appropriate. I would ask that you consider putting us on the April agenda.
Anything else, Tommy? Okay, questions?
Other public. Any other public? comment?
Well, did we? We didn't ask.
First.
There was no public comment. That was part of the application team.
Yeah.
So let's,
We're still.
Questions for the applicant?
Yeah, any questions from the applicant?
Yeah.
And are there none? Okay. Complex house, not one question? Okay.
We'll talk about it.
Now we'll hear from the public. If you're out there electronically, raise your hand, please. As this is our last project tonight. And,
No hands raised.
okay, thank you, Piper. So that's it. We'll go ahead and deliberate. At 8 o'clock.
I'll take that.
Who wants to start?
Oh, go ahead.
So I can start. So I must say that the presentation has changed my perspective on this project. Did not quite pick up on the challenges of the lot and the parking. And appreciate them showing the massing that we approved north of them. I came into this thinking that I agree with all of Erica's conditions, and I think that they were appropriate in the lens I was reviewing this packet under. I sort of, I don't know, this is a unique design. I sort of came into this thinking it was looked a little bit more like a Mesa house than a house in town, but it is in a unique shaped lot with unique access. And maybe my perception of it being sort of spread out and expansive was the fact the applicant's done a pretty good job of breaking up the mass into different components. So I would suggest that we strike number 3 and 4, which are related to revising the gable or the roof forms in general. I think the roof forms in general work. I would revise number 7 to say reduce the level yard. I think having some piece of yard is appropriate. That's what they're showing and ask for now is too expansive. I think the primary thing that as far as mass and scale I'm feeling like is to take the garage carport elements and lower them and reduce that mass as much as possible. The garage seems taller than it needs to be. The entryway, the stairs down seems wider than it needs to be. There's elements on the carport, which I understand architecturally, but I don't think they need to be there, and it could reduce the mass and scale. And I think if we could take those two components and bring them down, then the project is far more compliant in my eyes. Now, I do think there's all the other conditions do need to be addressed to some degree. But that's so I've changed my opinion on this project after the presentation.
And I think we can probably talk about mass and scale, mostly 1 through 10 here.
Yeah.
I mean, you can comment on anything, but, you know, seeing the house right across the street, the big block forms, to me, 3 modules as a starter is good. But I concur with Matt, basically the height of that west garage, which I penciled in, and we're not allowed to, in a formal hearing, tell you how to solve the problem. But I think there's an easy solution on the west side and, you know, maybe a little bit on the right side. I did have an additional condition to Erica's, not to pile on, but I just thought that the chimney on the east end might be slightly reduced. I mean, I'm just looking at the mass and scale and the guidelines. That might help a little. I don't know if that's 6-7 feet long. It must be at least, right? I think it's a chimney.
It looks large. I assumed it was a chimney.
A chimney?
Well,
Do we ask the applicant?
no, we're not.
We'll figure it out.
Is it a chimney?
Or is it?
I'm looking at this big stone that goes up almost to the top of the carport roof.
It's a chimney element. The strategy was to try to screen the parking.
Okay.
a bit.
Well, I can't ask you to explain it, but and on screening parking, you know, I made notes and stuff in the drawings on lower parking with a more solid rail. I mean, there's ways to, I think it's just so heavy to screen it, but I don't know if I'll make that a condition. Maybe I will just consider, but I think there's a way, particularly, my main focus is on the west side. And, you know, if somehow that came down from where that little double window is and everything above it was gone with some shed roof that came down the hill or something, you know, to flow with the topography on that west side above the garage, and that upper gable went away. And I concur with Matt. I mean, gables are allowed. I think it's unique, and I like the three sections, distinct sections that complement each other. I've got other minor notes, but I'm gonna, you know, let other people speak to this. And Bob, you want to?
Yes,
I'm looking at my drawings, Bob.
I know, I'm not supposed to. When I first saw this, I just thought, usually we ask people to do a little more articulation or a little more change. And this has got a lot going on. And I just wonder if there's a way to just simplify it a bit. I think the parts that I have most difficulty with are the big long gables that are going east-west, these here.
Which, can you ask to bring them up on the screen?
Yeah, let's put them up on the screen so you can point to it and
Those-
at least you can see what we're looking at.
3.1,
3-1,
A31.
A31. Okay. Well, and I'm suggesting the west gable goes away, the left side there, the big high gable of the garage.
okay, and then not have that covered over that space in between.
Well, I don't know.
You could just bring it down.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think the part that just doesn't fit to me is the piece of that long gable that
Shed.
has the 4 windows in
Yeah.
it. That
Clustering.
it just, you know, I like the way it's broken up overall. And I think with the different materials, it does read, it is cohesive, but it's still, you can read the different masses there, and I think it breaks down the scale of the house quite well. But I'm just bothered by that piece in the middle.
I agree with you. I think that if the garage gable is lowered and that piece is lowered, I don't know if the form has to change, if it gets tucked back down a little bit more behind the masking. You realize you're never going to see it in this view. So if it's dropped and lowered behind the sort of the primary asymmetrical gable form, and I don't know if that works with their plan. I have no idea. I'm assuming that's a stair. Don't know. I think that could work. Mark, I don't disagree that a shed could work and maybe work with the hillside more, but I do like that gable form and I appreciate it. I think if it can come down, if the stair can be narrowed, so it's not, they don't have a head height issue on the west side of the stairs coming down. And I'm not sure if that's bikes or trash storage, maybe that's a different roof. But I do appreciate the gable that's there.
and I didn't mean say we'd preclude it, but it seemed the easiest way to bring it down about 5 feet.
Well,
So I didn't know.
possibly, but still you got to park a vehicle in there. So I don't know if that's, if they're going to have much of a.
I thought the garage height was like 9 feet or something now, but
But if they do a shed roof on it,
yeah,
maybe it's going to really lower with
Yeah.
the parking. I don't know if it's going to.
okay. Well, we want to give them some freedom to solve the
Yeah.
design problem.
I think so.
We're not going to over specify here. But okay, so that's 2 people. Who wants to go next?
I mean, I'm kind of just commenting on the same thing, just that from the top of the gable that covers the garage on the west side, it just how long that roof line is going all the way down above the 4 window slot. I think just seeing that broken up a little bit would really help digest this lot from this elevation.
Yeah, I agree. That's what we've been talking about. The other thing, just throw it out there on the east side, I think there's too much going on with you have the gable, then you have the structure supporting one car, and then you have a roof over top of that and the chimney. It's just too much going on. It needs to be simplified.
I agree 100%. I would suggest that the metal structure of the carport be omitted and the chimney form or the screening reduced, just to simplify all that and bring the mass down, the scale down.
But what do they do for a roof over a carport?
Wouldn't have a roof.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was just simple, straight across. No pergola or roof structure over that one car.
And I do agree with sort of, Erica's comments of that form probably shouldn't be a all stone form.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it's stone on the base and then it's different materials that move up. I think that's a very appropriate comment.
What if that carport roof came down that you really didn't see it much? I mean, maybe I don't know. They'd have to figure it out. If it come down 3 feet, you wouldn't see it, but I agree that you can't have that big
think
stone
it's-
mass there either in front of it.
Just doesn't seem to fit to me.
The proportions of the stone fireplace form seem a bit odd with the way it's attached to the stone gable form.
Well, I'd suggest whatever we craft in this, and I think we're all agreeing that stone and chimney reduce, the side. Let them have some flexibility to see if that comes down and out of sight, the roof of the carports. I mean, they have a chance to have a roof. Even if it doesn't, it doesn't. There's already one's naked, right, without one. But, a person might, last Saturday and Sunday might want to have a carport.
It's true.
I don't know. Okay, who else would like to speak?
Is it because of how it's just flat? It just seems like it just protrudes out of it a little aggressively. I mean, if the chimney element wasn't there and it was more of a traditional gable form, would that?
Behind you?
Yeah.
As far as the carport roof,
I'm just trying to be a little empathetic. I freeze a lot on this side from parking, and I know it's difficult to get it in.
I think that the massing would far benefit if or trellis or roof structure were gone and it wasn't covered. I can't, the renderings on the front page make it look like it's a trellis versus a roof, but I'm not sure if that's the case or not. I don't know if it matters. It just, to me, it's mass that probably doesn't need to be there. It'd be beneficial if it was gone.
Yep. And that's what we're looking at greater AVT.
Okay,
Oh, sure. I would say I was in lockstep with Erica through in her analysis 1 through 18. So.
Okay.
Not much to add there. And with regard to your number 19, I would be in agreement.
okay, thank you. Belitza,
Yeah, I agree. Actually, the presentation also changed my my opinion as well, and I agree with Matt with everything Matt had to say, and also with number 19 that was added to discussion. Also with the comments in regards to the reduction of the gables on breaking the gables forms on the east and the west sides. That's it.
thank you.
Thanks.
So at the moment, I think, well, 4 people have consensus that 3 and 4 would be deleted. And the 7, straw poll 7, that it'd be reduced, not eliminated, the level yard.
That's what I would suggest.
Reduced is okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. And then on 10, that's to revise the parking area to be less visual impact. you know, I don't know that combining them is gonna help us. I think you're adding some mass and scale, but per the conversations tonight, we should revise that. I would suggest to give them one shot at revising it so you don't see it. Because if we didn't see it, we wouldn't, who cares?
That's what Erica's number 10 says, right?
Well,
Or less.
less a visual
I mean,
impact.
we're not going to eliminate.
I think you
It's
could
going to
just-
be a car sitting there on some kind of pad and it needs some kind of guardrail.
So we could just say, by consolidating and combining, we could just say, Erica's right, less of a visual impact, reducing the massing per DH13A. Okay.
Eliminate by consolidating or combine.
And then 19 would be reduce the stone wall chimney size on the east end.
Where's
Per
which one is
mass,
this?
huh?
Which one are you writing?
We're doing 19.
19
Oh, new
per
one.
mass and scale. DH16A, I think would work, 16A. And yeah, and then what? I think that's it, unless somebody has got something else. I mean, the only thing I would say, and I'll just say that we can agree to disagree, but I think that this is a very complex plot. And we're not used to going down the hill so much, but my personal belief is, in all sincerity, I think we could have got you in here in October or November for a work session, and we can agree to disagree, and I'm not asking you to even comment. But we all encourage work sessions, and then we could have a lot of back and forth here right now, and you could probably walk out of here and come back in a month, and we'd be done. And this could be approved, but now I know we're gonna go at least one more, maybe two. So it's not a discouraging remark, it's just that these are the kinds of things that I long for, to have more interaction, and we can't here at this meeting, and so I'm sorry about that, but that's what it is. But very good. Well, I think this is solvable. So who wants to?
I could if I had your number 19,
Okay,
the wording for that.
read my writing.
Probably not.
Are we going to April 16th?
Yes. We can't do March. We've got some other continuances we've committed and they're waiting.
But April is open? I thought April wasn't.
We're striking 3 and 4.
That's what I'm hearing.
Okay.
I
And
think
this-
everyone but Kiernan wants to strike 3 and 4.
Okay, and so that will not have any effect on 10.
10 will stand on its own.
With
Yeah.
the roof forms
Oh,
over the parking.
oh,
I don't see 3 and 4 necessarily.
10 can stand on its own, minimize the impact, which is obviously the roof. So I think it could stand on its own without 3 and 4.
Just making sure. we
Yeah,
don't
well, good
come back
question.
and address it again.
Yeah.
Well, let me think here. I see.
More of the big gables, but I'm okay. What do you want to do?
I think the condition is number 10 is worded great. I think if they find a different place for parking, they could do that. I mean, I don't want to be that specific at this level. I just think the trellis, the carport structure, if that was eliminated and the stone chimney was brought down or eliminated, it would reduce the mass and scale in that corner and make it feel much more integrated into the hillside.
What about the long gable roof in the middle?
I think that,
Center of the house?
That's one I would think that
so
Well, it's not very tall.
3 and 4 could.
1 and 2 still will address that.
The one from the top of the western garage that comes over the walkway and continues down over the
Yeah.
floor small ones.
Yeah, we're all concerned about that.
Yeah.
But do we need to, does that need to be
Well-
covered by 3 and 4?
That's
I don't think so. I mean, I think the 1 and 2 address that and then they're hearing the conversation. If otherwise, we're gonna need to
14.
rewrite 3 or 4 because we're not talking about a gable. We're not talking about the
No,
primary.
he's got, 14 does cover
14.
that.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. I'd be okay with 2 and 3 going, or 2 and 3 and 4
3 and
going.
4.
Okay, so you got 19 by or
Uh, okay, I'll just, like, I think I can read it. If I can't, I'll just ask you.
okay.
And
Okay.
then, and then 10, we're eliminating, it'll say of a visual impact
Eliminate those forward.
by reducing the massing per DH 13.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are good. All right, and we are going to April
April 16th.
16th. Okay, I'll give this a shot. I move to continue the small scale new construction at 724 Primrose Lane, lot 16, the overlook at Telluride subdivision, PUD, East Telluride Edition, to April 16th, 2025, based on the staff memo dated February 16th with the following conditions.
19th.
Oh, February 19th, excuse me. New glasses. Okay, 1 and 2 as stated. 3 and 4 deleted. 5, 6 as stated. 7, instead of remove, say significantly reduce the level yard from the southeast corner to better respect the steep hillside and natural resources on the site per DH number 2.c and SL number 4.a.1. 8 and 9 as stated. 10, make sure I get this right. Revise the parking area, have less of a visual impact by reducing the massing per DH number 13A. 11 through 18 as stated. Add 19, reduced stone wall chimney size per mass and scale. I'm not sure what you're saying here.
Masses, well, reduce the stone wall chimney side mass and scale.
Mass and scale. East, at the east end and per DH 16A.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay. Are we doing 20?
No.
This motion is based on evidence and testimony provided at a public hearing held on February 19th, 2025, with notice of such hearing provided as required by the Telluride Land Use Code.
Piper, were you clear on that new number 19? Or would you like it restated?
I'll repeat what I heard.
Okay.
Reduce the stone wall chimney size, mass and scale at the east end per DH 16A.
Matt will second.
And yes.
Matt, yes.
Mark, yes.
Bob, yes.
Andrew, yes.
Good luck.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you. Yep.
Thank you all. And I know it's only gonna be 11 and a half hours since I see you again, but
All right, 8:30 or 8 o'clock?
8 o'clock. I promise you, to walk out of there with some of the things Kristen and I,
Depot.
huh?
At the depot.
Historic Depot. Chris and I have got a list of things that will make this worthwhile and I think interesting, and everybody's input will be appreciated. So we'll see you at our strategic planning tomorrow morning on how to be better. We're going to adjourn at 8:26 p.m.
Am I allowed to go that?
No. You go. Of course, we can't.
You want to get